Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Recency Bias Radio, where no one is safe from criticism. I am your humble host, Dave Smith, Pretty Boy Smitty, Protocol Pearl, Pearl Game Ultra, Smith Dog Trill, the Rant God, Hotep Thanos, all of the above on that ISAT test and ACT. You know what it is! And we are here for part 2 of 13 Reasons Why, to break down why I call it 13 Reasons Moist, ladies and gentlemen. Now, if you haven't already, you need to go and check out my first video entitled Why 13 Reasons Why Sucks. If you check out the first video, it will provide you the necessary context to explain why the energy I'm keeping in this video is so consistent with the last video, okay, ladies and gentlemen? So please check that out before this one, because I guarantee everything comes home full circle. And y'all know me. I like to set little breadcrumbs, do a little red herring here and there to back up my reasoning. And it's funny because back when I reviewed season 2 of 13 Reasons Why, now, to give y'all a quick little background check on this, I didn't review season 1, so I came into season 2 basically reviewing seasons 1 and 2 all together for that video. With this video, it's going to strictly be breaking down season 3, because season 3 is so much different from the first 2 seasons. And remember, in the last video I dropped, I explained how poorly these writers have purposefully written a lot of these black characters to be dumb. The smartest guy in the school, valedictorian, I forgot his name, but he was a black guy. I think his name was Marcus, right? Man was supposed to be going to Harvard. This guy completely lied. He lied to giving testimony during Hannah's trial. This guy was found out to be paying off strippers. I mean, he was doing a lot of stuff that really wasn't that bad, but he thought it was that bad because of the pressure they made his dad put on him to make it into Harvard, okay? Now, when you really break down this season, it's almost as if they watched my review and they wanted to prove me right with this season, ladies and gentlemen. Because all of a sudden, the first episode drops and you get introduced to a new black character. And I guess this black character named Ani, who is told to be this Kenyan woman whose mother is an immigrant from Great Britain, but she cooks Ugandan food, okay? It's really layered, okay? And this is just a very racist season. I'm just gonna start off right there. It's a racist season because the main character has self-hate issues. She's an illegal immigrant, and if she's not an illegal immigrant, she definitely isn't a citizen. But for whatever reason, they put enough clout, enough weight on the opinion of a woman who isn't even a full-blown citizen to allow her opinions to decide the fate of how the season ends with her testimony. It is so bizarre. Now, we're gonna go ahead and move along slowly, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not gonna blow my wad too soon, but just know, this girl Ani is a joke. If anyone is a fan of this girl Ani, then that girl probably has self-hate issues as well. Because this girl Ani, she spent this entire season basically just kissing the feet of white men the entire series. You know, they propped her up to be this really intelligent young black woman. But for a girl who's so smart, she tends to throw away all her intuitive skills to sleep with white men or to kiss white men. This girl had prior knowledge of Bryce Walker being a rapist and yet still voluntarily gave him the box. She created an excuse when it came to Clay, okay? And see, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. This entire season was a gigantic love triangle, okay? Ani represents the living version of Hannah, okay? She's the living representation of what Hannah was. An introverted girl with a lot of things on her mind that just loves to hear herself talk. But because we don't have the tapes anymore, the tapes are substituted with Ani's narration skills, okay? So I'm really breaking down the start of this show in a nutshell. So because they made Ani the mouthpiece of this season, it really doesn't make sense because she doesn't carry any of the baggage from the first 2 seasons with her. So her opinions really are ignorant at best. But to fulfill an agenda, they made sure she was the main character because they made her look so terrible throughout this season. Now let's truly break this down. I got notes written down. I can explain this entire story to you. This is going to be a review of season 3, but it's going to be a unique critique of season 3. This is going to be kind of long. If you don't have all the time in the world, listen to this in spurts. But please listen to my first video first. That's the only thing I ask of you. Now, let's get to my first problem with this series, with this season. It is the fact that they created a plot device in Ani to make Bryce into a sympathetic figure. Now, what do I mean? Now, an obvious plot hole going into this season would be, no one cares about Bryce because we've seen 2 straight seasons of him not getting the justice he deserves. So we're going into this season wanting blood. Hell, I know a lot of people who supported Tyler going up to the school with the guns because they hated Monty so much, okay? So understand, we have all of this built up trauma, built up hate towards certain characters, right? So the obvious plot hole is, how are these writers gonna stretch out a season to 13 episodes when everyone wants Bryce gone in one, okay? Enter Ani. Enter her character. Her character is so bad. Black America, we need to be doing everything in our power to get this show looked at and to maybe jump on code together to get this entire season taken off Netflix. And here's why. This season is very disrespectful to black people. More specifically, it's more disrespectful to American descendants of slaves. What do I mean by this? Well, number one, you're replacing Marcus's character. You're replacing several other black characters that was in season 2. And you notice that all the characters that were only in season 2, that weren't in season 1, that were black. You notice that the ones that are gone are all the characters that are on All American now. So it makes sense why they are missing. But when you really look at this season in a nutshell, it had no black men in it. No straight black men. Jessica's dad was in this season for 1 episode. There was no Marcus, so there was no straight black men there. And there was no straight black men anywhere else in the season, okay? So much so, I think that was used as another plot device to explain why this girl Ani is only talking to white men. So they took all the black men away from this season to make an excuse for why Ani is only talking to these white men. Then add to the fact that Ani's mother is also an illegal immigrant, okay? Well, I don't think her mother's an illegal immigrant, but I think they're not citizens yet, right? And see, here's the problem. 13 Reasons Why tried their best to sweep this under the rug, but if you know your history, then you know immediately what images look like. Ani's mother was an indentured servant, okay, for the Walker family. Then you find out that the mother has been working for Bryce Walker's family since before the parents got divorced and before the grandfather got sick. Meaning what? Meaning this black girl Ani was staying there before, most likely before the trial ended with Hannah, okay? So it's plot holes being thrown everywhere at this point. But see, I want to stay right here because there's a lot of white people who don't want to admit that Ani was portrayed like a slave on this show. Her mother was portrayed like a slave on this show. They labeled the mother to be a nurse at the beginning of this show. Okay, she's a nurse. But then she offers to cook dinner for the family. And you go, what nurses do you know cooking meals? Then all of a sudden, she offers to be a housekeeper. And it's like, okay, so she's cleaning the house, she's the nurse, and she's the chef. That's a slave. So make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, Ani's character definitely had self-hate issues because her mother was a volunteer slave. But somehow, some way, 13 Reasons Why gets away with making this a main character in their story to replace other black characters. As soon as I saw that, I knew this season was starting off on the wrong foot, ladies and gentlemen. That's when I knew. And if you really peep game on some of the outfits her mama be wearing, come on, y'all. And the way this chick, Ani, was at the Walker's family place. She was at their house just walking in and out of rooms over and over. It was like she was perfectly fine being the house slave. And what makes it even more disrespectful is her having prior knowledge to Bryce being a rapist, and she still decided to have sex with him on multiple occasions after the fact. And this is after she saw cocaine dust on Bryce's desk in his office. This is after she saw him at the bar getting drunk. Mind you, these is only teenagers, man. This is after she saw him destroying his own property in his room. Okay, so this Bryce dude, he clearly had tons of baggage. He was a rapist that was let off by probation. But for whatever reason, this black girl has such a kind heart that she's willing to give a white dude 28 chances in the world to get with her. And there's no black men, there's no straight black men written into the story for her to even try to change her ways, right? So understand, ladies and gentlemen, the agenda was real of this season. It was to take our minds off of the idea of interracial couples being black man, white woman, and inserting the idea that is exclusively black woman, white man. This is why Jessica, after the Hannah trial, is out here back to being passed around in between Alex and Justin. She don't care. And let me ask y'all this question. Why did it take Ani giving Jessica a sex toy for Jessica to find her groove back? To my knowledge, Ani is having less sex than Jessica is. So how would she know how to spark her sexual drive better than Jessica knows? That was another plot device. That was another plot hole. But if they're trying to imply that her having sex with Bryce somehow made her an expert on sex when Bryce is a predator, then it once again is the writers of this show trying their hardest and their darndest to make even the most evil and vile of white characters seem redeemable. And see, this is only the tip of the iceberg, ladies and gentlemen, because when they're willing to portray a main character who is black as an indentured servant, and they are forcing them to be subjected to sex with a predatory human being who is rich, as Bryce Walker's family was, it made Bryce Walker's house and all the acres of land they had look like a plantation. All right, so every time they went back to Bryce Walker's family in their living complex, it always looked like the plantation, okay? So every time they had another scene with Bryce in it, it was so cringy for me as a black man because I am seeing that they are portraying this like a plantation. And for this black girl, and see, this is the problem I have with Ani. Ani is doing all of this flirting with Clay throughout the season. You know, she claims to be this girl who's into robotics. Clay is into robotics. They're into like all the same exact things, but she's low-key playing him. And she's almost next to him, using him just to figure out more information regarding Bryce, okay? So the majority of the season is really Ani looking for a way to defend Bryce. Not to do what's right by the people that had to deal with all of the crap Bryce started. Not to do right by those people. It was all about doing right by Bryce for her just simply because she was sleeping with him. And that's what ticked off Clay during this season. She was using Clay. In fact, she did not sleep with Bryce until after Bryce caught her kissing Clay in the car. So we have no way of knowing if this girl's self-hate runs so deep that she was using one white guy to get to the one white guy she truly wanted. We don't really know. But we do know she was lying to Clay's face about how close she was to Bryce to protect Bryce, proving that she really is in the sunken place. She's one of those slaves who thinks because she's in the house, everything's all right. That's who Ani's character was. And she even had the audacity to be mad at her mother when her mom was mad at her for sleeping with the slave master's child. Okay? The mother had a reason to be mad. And see, here's the thing. I remember her mom, all the white folks in the house, they gave her a nickname. They call her like Anna Josephine or something. Don't that sound like a name from back in the day in slavery times, where you get someone two names? You see what I'm saying? All of this was dog whistling, ladies and gentlemen. It was all dog whistling. This was some fetish type stuff, okay? And for whatever reason, the writers decided, you know what would be great? If we allowed Bryce to keep having sex after getting off with rape. We think that will be great. Y'all realize Clay didn't have no sex this entire season, but Bryce did. Come on, man. They're in a nutshell showing you whose side they're on right then and there, okay? Like, this is very sad, man. This is very sad, but let's move on over to my notes, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to give y'all a cold intro to let y'all know, I'm coming with the smoke with this review. And I want y'all to know, I'm peeping game on all the dog whistling, all the symbolism, and I'm gonna break it down only the way I know how. And y'all know when I take notes, I look at everything and I read between the line, baby. So, season 3 starts off very typical, ladies and gentlemen. Like I mentioned, there's this new black girl named Ani. Now, in my opinion, Ani is here because Sherry is gone, okay? And remember, in the last review, I broke down how Sherry, they were always hinting towards Clay being with a black girl with Sherry, right? Sherry was in his room late at night. Sherry kissed him. You see what I'm saying? So they were always hitting towards, Clay might like the black girls a little bit more, okay? Now, because of the Hannah situation, Clay was always, for the most part, anchored into doing what was right by Hannah, and that made him incapable of finding new love. So after her case is over, you notice he's not talking to astral plane Hannah form Hannah anymore. He's not talking to the Jedi mind trick Hannah anymore. Now he's moved on. But that's only because now it's all about Bryce, okay? And see, this Ani chick played a decent role in making Bryce and Clay hate each other more because she was the one in between them that was flirting with both of them. If Ani would have just played her role and stayed in her lane, then I personally believe Clay is never even a suspect in Bryce's death. But because Ani did a lot of messy things like kiss Bryce in front of Clay on homecoming night, which we'll get into towards the end because that was a finale, a scene from the finale, but because she did dumb things like that, it put Clay on the trajectory to want to whoop Bryce butt, okay? And I'm trying my best not to curse, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm keeping it real with y'all. Now, at the end of the day, have y'all ever asked yourself this question? Why does it seem like every new victim of Bryce's has been black ever since Hannah? Now, I know Chloe technically was a victim, but that was his girlfriend, and when she got in front of the court, she lied on his behalf, okay? So when I look at Chloe, I look at a girl who jumped on code, but just didn't want to have Bryce's baby. And to let y'all know, Chloe ended up having an abortion on said baby. But because she hooked up with Zach, that caused beef between Bryce and Zach. And see, that's the thing. This season does more of sympathizing with Bryce as someone who has raped people in the past than it did sympathizing with Tyler, who actually got raped by Monty. It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre. They gave less support to the victims. They basically waited to the end of the season for Jessica to give a speech at an assembly to give all the victims anything. And for every other episodes besides that, they basically just moved it along slowly, letting Bryce, just pipe down Ani. And it's so disrespectful. Now, let's continue. Now, at first, Ani appears to be as smart as Marcus was, but with the thirst for Clay Jensen that Sherry had. Her purpose soon gets understood as a hybrid of the two, and she starts narrating the season. She's into robotics, Clay, and the student council. But the moment I stopped liking this character happened towards the end of episode 1. she met Bryce and revealed her mother was his grandfather's nurse, okay? Now, when you look at how she dresses on top of her mom's attire, on top of the British accent, which is a plot device to explain why she's choosing on a white guy in the first place. Let's keep it real. It's all designed to make her and her mother look like Walker family slaves as well, which I mentioned in the cold opener, okay? So I want y'all to really peep game on all these things. They gave her the English accent to domesticate her a bit more, okay? They made her a non-citizen to make her more desperate. You feel what I'm saying? And for all we know, this girl could have been having sex with Bryce just because she may have felt more protected by Bryce's family's money. After all, during this season, they alluded to them paying off the police, okay? You feel what I'm saying here? So if Bryce's family got all this money, more money than anyone else in the neighborhood, and they also have an all-black staff cooking meals for them, cleaning their household, and that are nursing them back up to health, you mean to tell me that's not a plantation? Especially when you take into account how smug his family was the first 2 seasons. Come on, man. These is racist people. And let's keep it all the way a bean. The majority of rich folk are rich off the slave trade from their ancestrals, okay? So this all goes back full circle to, at the end of the day, they were trying to tell us something. Bryce's family most likely got their riches from the slave trade, okay? But for this girl Ani to be so intelligent, but not read between the lines on the situation, it just goes to show a lot of immigrant black people, a lot of people who aren't American descendants of slaves, they don't truly know what they're getting into when they come here. When they come here, all they want to do is kiss the white person's butt. But in reality, they don't know that they're just making lives worse for all black people the more they come here and they resort to that, okay? And Ani is no different, you know? She even told off her mom at some point and told her, "You brought me to America and I'm trying to fit in." No, you're not trying to fit in, Ani. You're nosy. If you're truly not a citizen, you shouldn't want to be questioned by the police because they could deport you. I mean, Tony's family got deported by ICE. Theoretically speaking, Ani should have been deported as soon as she got brought in for questioning because she's not a citizen. But somehow she gets to become the narrator of the season? That doesn't even make any sense, 13 Reasons Why. And see, this is my point. They wanted so badly to fit this agenda to cover up one initial plot hole to give Bryce some character development that they were willing to create major plot holes in the judiciary system, in the police station. Look, I'll tell you this. Number one, the police ain't gonna value the opinion of a black woman about a rich white kid. They not gonna value it. Even if there's DNA that she had sex with that dude, they're not gonna value it that much. But they valued hers. But let me ask y'all this question. What incentive did they have to value her opinion if she had no citizenship? If her mother didn't really have citizenship? If they may have been illegally working for Bryce's family to begin with? Did Bryce's family paying off the police? Is that what gave her the clout to speak? See, now that's a question people need to answer. And see, here's the thing. No one's talking about this. Bryce's mom walked up on Clay confronting Bryce over Ani, but we never saw a scene of Bryce's mom talking to Ani about being with her son. Ani was sleeping with Bryce multiple times, and she woke up in the morning next to him in bed. If her mom is the housekeeper, you mean to tell me her mom never once walked in on them together? Now, her mom did know about them being together, but she never blew up the spot because she didn't want to get kicked out the house. So that shows you the self-hate right there. She's willing to pimp out her daughter just to stay a slave in their plantation. Woo! See, I'm breaking this down right now like no one else can, coach. This that recency bias radio. And see, I'm really in my bag right now, but I'm not even in full flow yet. Because I specifically remember a scene before Ani had sex with Bryce. She specifically told him, because they were playing poker. This was before they started playing strip poker and stuff like that. And then he was talking about how he doesn't have any friends, okay? So he was playing the pity party game with her, making her feel sorry for him, okay? And she's still feeling him at this point, but you know, she's playing hard to get, acting like, oh, we ain't gonna be nothing more than friends, woo out the bam. And then he said something to the fact that I would like you as more than a friend. And then she said something to the effect of, why would you want a friend who's the help? She specifically said the help, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't know what the help references, it references a book and it represents a movie about slaves who did everything they could to help out white folks in a plantation. So this was the writers subliminally telling us that Ani and her mother were the help. Meaning there were no other people in that household helping these white folks besides black folks. That confirmed it, okay? So for Ani to know what the help references as an immigrant woman from Great Britain who is Kenyan, that knows how to cook Ugandan meals, that speaks Swahili, okay? For her to be out here coming up with African pet names in Swahili for Clay, teaching him how to say I love you in Swahili, knowing what the help means, being socially and self-aware enough to know that she is a slave in that house, to still have all of that in her mind prior to having sex with Bryce, further proves that this girl was written into this story to set our young black women back. She was there to set an example for our young black women to go chase white men. She was there to tell them that the intelligent black females in our culture should not be out here with young black men. That's the purpose she was written into the confines of this story to emit. And you are a fool if you deny this, because this is... You can't even debate this. This is irrefutable information. She went out of her way to use the phrase the help, ladies and gentlemen. She went out of her way. That shows she at least knows enough about American descendants of slaves to know she was out of pocket for rocking with Bryce so much. Period. I mean, at the end of the day, her character is basically making a mockery of the real trauma black American women have to deal with in high school. Her purpose is just come in and just be like, hey, I'm from Britain and I'm black, so because I talk with an accent, the things I say should hold more weight, even though I don't know any of you and shouldn't be trusted by any of you, but I'm gonna speak on all of your behalf because I knew Bryce and he told me some things. Like, what incentive does Bryce have to tell you the truth? But that's neither here nor there. But let's really get into the theory of the Walker family slaves, because Bryce has always been known for being rich, and some rich people benefited from the slave trade. Ani's mom is called a nurse, but she's offered to cook and clean, while the mom of Bryce mourns over him missing. Now, I don't know where you're from, but nurses don't cook dinner where I'm from. Unless the term nurse was the best term they could think of for it, without really saying it. Either way, this was a slick tool used by the writers to explain the plot hole of how this random black girl could meet Bryce, who was no longer at liberty, before he went missing at homecoming. And see, that's another thing. There is no possible way for Ani to have crossed paths with Bryce unless she lived in his plantation. That's the key to this plot hole. That's the key to this plot device. If they did not make her a woman with all of these things to lose, with all of this desperation, okay? And let's not lose sight of the power dynamic here, of Bryce having all this power, okay? He basically had the power to snap his finger and send both of them back to the UK. That's how much power Bryce had. So for this girl to voluntarily give him the box and speak nothing but highly of him, knowing the power dynamic and knowing he tried to force himself on her by the pool later in the season, it just goes to show she doesn't remember any of his lowlights, only his highlights. But that's neither here nor there. Let's continue. You know, one of my mentors, the brother Tariq Nasheed, he says that names like Anna are used to portray mammies like the Popeyes lady, for example. That means the name Ani is also a slick way of saying slave. At the beginning of episode 2, Ani speaks to her mom, and the nurse is now a housekeeper all of a sudden. So she cleans, cooks, and takes care of them. This has all the makings of a very polarizing family. Ani overhears Bryce's mom blame Clay for Bryce being missing in action. So that was the moment when all of a sudden Ani said, hold up now, I want to protect my other white king. Hold up now. Now, for some reason, this chick Ani has a special language she speaks exclusively with Clay that is very ethnic. What I can't stand about this, and now that we know that it's Swahili, let's go ahead and just say it's Swahili. What I can't stand about this is she speaks it only with someone white. This implies she is a sellout to her culture. Think about that. She doesn't speak Swahili with Jessica. You feel me? No, she speaks strictly English with her. You feel what I'm saying? They start showing scenes of her swimming around Bryce. This was a very awkward scene. This looked like she was trying to flirt with him, bruh. She was doing the backstroke. First off, if a female is around you doing the backstroke, swimming backwards, she wants you to check out her body, bro. You feel it, dig me? Like, come on, dog. Like, you ain't fooling nobody here. And why you swimming while Bryce is around? Like, what is this, Californication? You feel it, dig me? But let's move on. They also show her gaining sympathy for Bryce under the premise that people at his new school mistreat him. But in reality, all those people at the new school did was hold him accountable for being a rapist. He wasn't mistreated at all. I mean, this is how Dean should have been treated on Degrassi. I saw nothing wrong with this. I saw absolutely nothing wrong with this. But let Ani tell the story, and all she does is tell it how Bryce told her. And this began to expose Ani has a blind spot when it comes to Bryce. She believes everything he said is nothing but the truth. But when it comes to every other character, she believes that they lie to her with an agenda. Now, why wouldn't Bryce have an agenda? You see what I'm saying? Like, Ani is a walking contradiction. But let's continue. But why does this black girl Ani feel any sympathy for this guy? Is it as simple as she has no choice because her mom is an indentured servant? Seems that way the more you watch the season. She has to follow her mom's orders, but then the writers throw a curveball by showing the black mom of Ani tell Ani not to get involved. Then Bryce throws a temper tantrum over Chloe leaving him, and guess who's there to console him? Ani. You see what I'm saying? As soon as this dude goes through a breakup, you're there to console him, but you don't want no action with him? Come on now. Nah. You saw your opening. You saw it was your chance in the game to hit the walk-off home run, and you went for it because you a bed wench. Let's just really call it what it is, bro. Let's just really call it what it is. You feel me? And there's absolutely no mention of Ani's father in this season, by the way, right? Like, we're to assume the father's black, but we see nothing of him because they're illegal immigrants with non-citizenship. So we don't get to see the father. We don't get to see no FaceTime involving the father. Hell, we don't even know what the father looks like. We can just assume the father's black, and the mother, who's now a slave, has talked her daughter into not getting a man that looks like a father because obviously she chasing nothing but white men. You feel me? And see, that's the crazy part, man. The mom, she don't have no pride to tell her, what's up with all these white boys? She don't have the pride to say that because she working as a slave for a white family. She don't have the heart to say that to her daughter. So instead, she pimps her out. And that's the saddest part about this. See, look, man. Look, y'all can say whatever y'all want about me, but everything I've said so far in this video is completely spot on. If you go and watch that season after watching this video, you'll be shocked how spot on I am. You'll be shocked. And you'll be shocked that this made it on Netflix with all of this dog whistling to slavery. But let's continue, all right? They make Ani, on one hand, seem like this genius private investigator with no bias towards anyone because she's new to the scene, to contradicting all of it completely by forcing her to live among Bryce's family to avoid a plot hole in the story, and by forcing her to be this British-speaking black girl. They domesticate her further to justify there not being any black men among the main characters. I didn't even like Marcus in the first 2 seasons, let me be clear, or that guy from the track team that's on All-American now. But at least they were black men that had a purpose in the story that weren't moist. I mean, they took all the brothers out the picture to create some weird abridged slave Dora the Explorer version of 13 Reasons Moist. That's what Ani is. Ding, ding, ding. That's a spot on description of her. She is an abridged slave Dora the Explorer version of who Hannah was. That's who Ani is, coach. You can take that to the bank, coach. Cash it in. Direct deposit, coach. I mean, it's such a bizarre plot twist they went with. I mean, Ani eventually finds the outline of a letter Bryce wrote on a notepad and deciphers it by lightly shading the parchment with pencil lead. She finds out Jessica is the one Bryce had to have done wrong the most because her name was at the top of the list. But I call BS here because this girl shouldn't be able to sneak into Bryce's room that easily when he's not home. She even said she doesn't live in the same house. So how is she sneaking around in his house before school then? That's a plot hole. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I found out she was lying to Clay the entire time. She always stayed in the same exact house, but she lied to Clay because she ain't want Clay to know how close she was to this guy. And she probably didn't want him to know she was an indentured servant to Bryce, okay? Because I'm pretty sure Clay wouldn't want to hit that if he knew you were a slave to the guy he hates. That would take down your value a lot, wouldn't it, huh? But that's neither here nor there. See, I'm really putting y'all on game right now, man. I'm telling you, if you're black and you have not seen this season, you probably shouldn't. Just watch the rest of this video and just chill out. It's not going to be worth your synergy, all right? It's not going to be worth your energy either, okay? So this is a girl who claims to not live in the same house, but she can sneak around the house as much as she wants, to the point where she's always in Bryce's room snooping for stuff. Always in his room. Like seriously. Like, she was obsessed with Bryce. Obsessed with this dude. I mean, so anyway, that's a plot hole. And they probably only had Ani admitting to staying somewhere else to subtly deny the clear elephant in the room, okay? Of her being a bedwench. Now, Bryce's body gets found in the riverbank and he's confirmed dead. At first, I thought this was the kid who got assaulted at the end of season 2. But the editors purposely faked us out. I'm talking about Tyler. While also implying he may have killed Bryce. Now everybody is a suspect because we don't know what all happened. And that's basically this entire season. From episode 2 on, it's a mystery trying to figure out who actually killed Bryce Walker. Now, for a long portion of this, I thought he committed suicide. I'm not going to get into who actually killed him until the end of the video because I want there to be some suspense here. And y'all know how I break stuff down. So I want to break it down at a pace that I watched it at, so you know how I'm feeling in the moment of these episodes. So let's continue. All right. Now, the absence of the tapes this season seems to also be a reason for Ani's character being here. She's the only main character who was never considered by Bryce's mother as a suspect in his death, but she does name everyone else. Right on cue, they make Ani racial profile and suggest through narration that Jessica has to be the most likely culprit. Now, of course, I had a huge problem with this, ladies and gentlemen. You know, this is the girl talking about the help. This is the girl acting like she knows everything. This is the girl that acts like she's so woke and so smart, but the first person on her mind that had to have killed her white god complex happens to be the black girl? Like, jeez. That showed me in a nutshell her self-hate once again. All right? And please believe throughout this season, they're going to try their best to help Ani atone for all of the cooning she does earlier in the season. But let's continue. She runs to Clay and tells him her suspicions. Clay doesn't really buy it, but Ani is adamant about it. Now keep in mind, she is supposed to be her campaign manager, okay? Now if you guys don't, I didn't mention this yet, so let me explain. Essentially, Jessica realized that her being a survivor of sexual assault makes her the ideal candidate to run for student council president. Once she realizes this, Ani offers to become her campaign manager. But I have reason to believe Ani only offered to do that because she was nosy and wanted to follow Jessica around because of Bryce. I think this was all about Bryce, y'all. I don't think she ever really cared about Jessica. I don't think she ever really did. You feel what I'm saying? I think her whole purpose of being close to Jessica was because she was slowly understanding the information surrounding Bryce, and she wanted to understand the victims of Bryce before she actually let Bryce get the box. Now, I'm really giving y'all the truth here. This is the truest tea, all right? This is the truest of them all, all right? So like I said, she's supposed to be Jessica's campaign manager, but Jessica's the first person she suspects of the crime. That don't make sense. And she's dissing the crap out of her behind her back. Ani was the one who told Jessica to harness the weapon people like her. She was the one who told Jessica to harness the weapon of being a survivor, okay? She was the one who told her that to get her to run for president. But now she's using her surviving sexual assault as a means to throw her under the bus with the police. Philosophically speaking, Ani is tap dancing throughout this season, and it seems like she has no black pride at all. It's like a prerequisite on this show for the black characters to coon it up. But when Jessica asked her if Bryce talked to her in the past, she lied to her and said no because she isn't allowed near him. So that's even more proof she was feeling Bryce and buying the nonsense he was selling. And it also is proof she was not only lying to Clay about Bryce, she was lying to Jessica as well. And those are two people who both were victims of Bryce. And she chose Bryce over the victims. So I just want to keep driving this point home, man. And it's foolish to think her mom, being a mammy, didn't play a huge role in this. This is deeper than what it is on the surface, ladies and gentlemen. This season is full of confusing time skips without the tapes to ground the storytelling. But when it went back to the future, Jessica confronted Ani about her being so damn nosy about Bryce post his death. And when you take into account her lying about seeing him in the house, it makes sense Jessica would be mad. Also, ladies and gentlemen, on homecoming night, a very important moment happened that I want to mention now because it backs up my argument on why her opinion should not have been taken seriously by the police when she gave her confessional. There was a moment where the protest kicked off. It was during halftime of the homecoming game. They storm the field, interrupt the game, and they just start protesting. During this moment, Bryce sees the police about to run on the field. He tells Ani to get the hell out the jam because he knew if she got locked up, she might get deported, right? Ani runs off. Now, if Ani was scared of the police then, why wouldn't she be scared of them later to give a confessional? You see what I'm saying? That didn't make sense. In theory, she should have been scared of the police no matter what. But it seemed like she was only scared about being caught protesting as a teenager by the police? Huh? That's another plot hole, ladies and gentlemen. That's another plot hole. Because in theory, she shouldn't have been scared during that protest if she was just gonna be the person that snitches on everybody to the police. But that's neither here nor there. We'll get into that later. See, man, I'm just showing y'all how messy this season is, man. But, all right, so let's continue. And when you take into account her lying about seeing him in the house, it makes sense why Jessica would be mad with Ani. But it once again proves how morally flawed they made Ani in this season. She inserted herself into a toxic environment like she never had robots to tend to. She doesn't even mention robotics again to my knowledge in the story, unless she's in robotics class. It was just used to raise the ceiling of her intellect in episode 1. This girl Ani is bizarre. She spied on Jessica when she was talking to Bryce. I mean, she's just overly protective. But then I peeped game on the one scene that 100% proved that they are slaves to the Walker family. Uh-oh. Now, I actually provided enough of a timestamp for y'all to check this out yourselves so y'all can thank me later. About 23 minutes into episode 3 of season 3, Ani is playing cards with Bryce right after spying on Jessica with him. She mentioned in her deposition that she didn't want to be around him alone for long. So she's lying to the police, she's lying to Clay, she's lying to Jessica. Basically, she lied on oath. That should have been enough to deport her ass. But for some reason, because she's with a whole bunch of white men, we gonna let that slide. I'm just letting y'all know. She is getting immunity to a degree just because she slept with the son of the family that pays off the police. I mean, that's what it looks like. All right? But let's continue. Notice how Bryce starts flirting with Ani as she flirts back. She mentions how he doesn't have friends. Now, this is what I mentioned with the help, so listen carefully, because this is me taking notes on it now. This ain't me freestyling, this is factual. She mentions how he doesn't have friends. Bryce says, "What makes you say that?" She then says, "He's playing cards with the help." The help is another name for slave mammies, and there's even a book and a movie about the phrase itself. This was more codified language, proving these writers are sick and twisted to make just about every woman raped by Bryce besides Hannah a black girl. And for there to be a new black girl in Ani, more focused on sympathizing with him, ruins all the progress built up by Jessica in the first 2 seasons. And see, that's facts, because there's a lot of young girls who look up to Jessica for being a survivor, for being someone that can warn other women to not have to follow in her footsteps to make the mistakes she had to make. And then you got a girl like Ani who's like, "Hey, I know the mistakes you made, but I still want to risk it all with Bryce. Even though my situation isn't the best, and the power dynamics of my situation make me look like a submissive slave, you know what? I'm really feeling Bryce that much because he's capable of rehabilitation." Like what? Are you serious right now, Ani? So Bryce ends up replying back to her after she mentions the help, and he says he was hoping they could be more than friends. She says because her mom works for his mom, that can't happen. That was a lie. But then she says being friends is okay. Somehow, after all of this flirting, Ani is the one to get Jessica to stop hating herself by introducing her to vibrators. How does the girl who has no man living in slave quarters know about vibrators more than a girl who has multiple boyfriends in the city they're in? That makes no sense. Maybe Jessica should have been the one putting Ani on game, okay? Because Ani, it seemed like if it ain't a vibrator, it's gotta be a white man. That seems to be her way of life. You feel what I'm saying? And it seems to be Jessica's way of life too, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. But it does make Ani look like a girl who would rather have a vibrator than a black man. So that's also an L for this show. They got the girl with the most self-hate rehabilitating the self-hate of a girl who got assaulted by a guy she's showing sympathy towards and choosing on. See, when I break it down like that, the story doesn't make any sense, coach. What remains unclear is what is driving Ani the most. Is it helping Jessica? Is it solving Bryce's death? Or is it her trying to do Clay's job for him because she wants all of his attention? Turns out it was neither of the three, ladies and gentlemen. She just wanted to defend Bryce. So maybe it is a little mixture of her solving his death, but at the end of the day, she just wanted to defend Bryce's honor. That's all it came down to. That was her purpose. You know, because when they are out on a date, Ani says her mother is Kenyan but cooks Ugandan. But notice what she says after that. She says it's no worries because she likes mayonnaise. I can't make this up, man. Bro, I'm telling y'all, go look at the date Ani had with Clay, which looked like at a sandwich shop. First of all, the way Ani was eating her sandwich was so weird. She was picking at it in little pieces and eating it with her fingers. It looked so weird. And then for her to go out of her way to say, no worries, I like mayonnaise. Yeah, we know you like mayonnaise because you're only around white dudes. But for her to say that out loud, that's another form of the writers making her coon it out vocally, okay? I'm just giving y'all more examples of this. I mean, they making this too easy for me. I mean, Clay is corny as hell, but she's feeling it just because he's a white guy. But she's cornier than him to tolerate it and say she loves mayonnaise more than food from her culture. That was self-hating in itself. This is exceeding even my expectations for how bad they could make a black character in this show. Justin and Jessica meet secretly at the hotel to discuss Bryce. Ani and Clay pull up on them as well. This starts a flashback to right after Jessica saw Bryce when Justin threatened to kill Bryce if he didn't stay away from Jess. But while doing it, Bryce mentions how he knows what really happened at Spring Fling. Now, Spring Fling was the situation when Tyler brought the AK to the dance, okay? So, and that was season 2's finale, by the way. Turns out Bryce saw them sneak out the gymnasium that night. But what is unclear here is whether he thought he could manipulate Justin like the old days with this information, or if he simply was trying to offer an olive branch. I would go for the latter because it was irrelevant to the conversation. But what does become evident is Bryce will take it upon himself to confront Monty De La Cruz to atone for the toxic environment he created at Liberty. The reason I believe this is because Tyler, the school shooter, or the would-be school shooter, had a voice machine message from an episode ago of Bryce saying he would handle it. Either that means he dumped the pistol, or lied about dumping the pistol to go kill Monty with it. Or maybe he got killed while dumping the pistol. Either way, the writing style of this season is way too nice to Bryce in my opinion. And by removing his dad from the season, they made his family seem more human and less cynical. In other words, Bryce's family made Bryce seem more of a villain by his presence. Bryce's father made Bryce seem like more of a villain by his presence. So they used the divorce that his parents went through on top of the indentured servitude to make people care more about Bryce's death than they would have without these plot devices. More facts. Now, shortly after Jessica gets her groove back from using sex toys, she goes back to being a thought. She sleeps with Justin even though she has a boyfriend and feels no remorse simply because she's over her own trauma. Jessica even admits to Ani that she feels guilty for sleeping with an ex that let her get raped. And Ani says that's her business. Further showing how none of these black women are learning from each other's negative experiences sleeping with white men. Instead, they encourage each other to hop back on the saddle with another white guy. This is mind-blowing stuff. And our young black girls watching this show will be so confused about what character to emulate because they have no black character of substance on the show to look up to. More facts. Now, episode 3 ends with Tyler looking at a picture of Bryce's dead body face down with what looked like a gunshot wound to the back of his head because someone with a Hillcrest Letterman jacket was laying there. So a lot of people expected that to be the corpse of Bryce Walker, which it did end up being. All right, I don't want to send y'all off by saying a lot of people thought that's what it was. But with a season like this, you don't know if they're trying to send you off with stuff like this. But at the end of the day, that's what it was. Now, the number one thing you notice at the end of episode 3, though, is Tyler is looking at this picture with a handgun on his bed. Now, if you know how season 2 ended and how season 3 began, they took all of Tyler's guns and they basically hid all of them. Now, what you come to find is Tony and Clay came up with the idea to just throw all of those guns in the river, in the lake or whatever. I think they call it a pier. So they threw it in the pier. So really, they threw it all underwater. Now, eventually, I believe all of those guns got found in the water as well before the season ended. But it never really came back to haunt anyone. But at the end of the day, the cliffhanger part of this episode was basically just seeing Tyler with a gun and with the gunshot wound to the back of Bryce's head. It led us to believe Tyler was the number one culprit in killing Bryce, and that's how you move on over to episode 4. So, of course, episode 4 starts with news breaking that Bryce has already been killed, or he's already died, and all signs point to Tyler as he tells Tony he wants to dispose of his gun the same way they made the assault rifle from Spring Fling disappear. And since we saw the gun on his bed, but he didn't give it to Tony, we are privy to information some characters aren't privy to at this stage of the story. Now, Tony ends up asking Ani to keep her eye on Tyler as they both suspect Tyler has the gun at school. Now, in my opinion, this season does more work to make Bryce sympathetic than Tyler. Almost as if Tyler was forgotten as another victim of sexual assault at the beginning of this season. Let's be real here. He was raped worse than the women were, when you really break it all down. But nobody knew what happened to him and just dismissed him as socially awkward. But the truth is, Tyler's character before the mopstick situation wasn't that awkward. More like misunderstood. But in high school, these are the personalities that get preyed upon, unfortunately. Now, Jessica gets caught by Alex cheating with Justin. This ruins their relationship before Bryce even died, meaning Alex would have little to no reason to kill Bryce himself, ruling him out as a suspect if he was mad at Jessica when Bryce died. If I remember correctly, his main beef has always been with Monte de la Cruz himself since season 1. So that does increase the likelihood that Justin may have done it. Now, Justin, Clay, and Ani meet up with Zach because Justin knows Zach knows something about Tyler regarding Bryce. Zach tells them what Bryce told Justin about knowing the details of Spring Fling while creating the narrative of why Tyler would kill Bryce himself. They show Tony working with Tyler on controlling his anger, and they show Tyler telling his therapist he doesn't have any friends, despite all these people co-opting a spreadsheet in order to keep him busy and away from solitude. Jessica, by the way, I want to commend these people for this because, I grew up with some people who had suicidal thoughts, and no one was good enough friends to those people to create a spreadsheet with a calendar of events 2 weeks in advance to keep one of their friends from jumping off the deep end. I mean, I thought Clay in this one moment showed, man, this dude, he's become quite a leader. I mean, Clay even tried to beat somebody up who he thought was bullying another kid. I'm like, wow, the old Clay would have never did this. He was a punk, but that's neither here nor there. So Jessica invites Tyler to work on her campaign, and little do they know he is also a victim of assault, though. So one person even interrupts Tyler while he's speaking and tells him he needs to know his place as an ally because he isn't a real victim. And it's pretty ironic because seeing how Tyler doesn't even consider his friends to be his friends, it makes sense why he wouldn't reveal the truth in that kind of a setting. So the majority of this season is basically waiting for Tyler to gain the confidence to tell people about his experience. That way Monty can finally be put to justice in the ways that Bryce was never put to justice. That's what one of the underlying tones of this season was about. Now, Tyler believed creating a theme for Homecoming based off the events at Liberty would be disrespectful to the dead, but his opinion is never really taken seriously. Jessica should be the first person to figure out the truth because she is around for all of these scenes. And as fate would have it, I believe one of the first person he told was Jessica, if not the first person he told. I think besides, Clay, of course, I think Jessica was like maybe the first person he told. Don't quote me on that, but I think that was the truth though. Because I think Jessica with her speech, I think in that assembly, she put him in a position to feel empowered to come out. And then by him coming out and admitting he was a victim, Justin stood up and admitted he was a dang victim. That's what really was a curveball. I'm like, what? So it made Jessica look even worse. It's like, dang, Jessica. So the only two dudes at this school you choosing on, one dude walked with a limp and the other dude was molested when he was 5 years old and he was a male prostitute. These are the only two guys for you. And in Ani's case, the only guy for you is a rapist? Like, come on. They make the black women on this show, I mean, bro, they make it seem like they're so dumb. And they never once written a thorough brother into this show. They never once did it because they don't want to give that image. Because they know they're going to have to be fair with that brother. They're going to let him have to be with some snow bunnies. Right? They don't want to get that image out. You see, they won't even show Jessica's parents no more. She got a white mama, black daddy. They won't even show them no more. Okay? So you see what it is. But let's continue. Tyler tries to kill himself with the pistol he was hiding, but couldn't go through with it. Instead, he tries to get an apology from Monty. Monty manipulates him into thinking Bryce gave the order to do the whole mop stick thing from season 2's finale. Bryce admits that the only reason he didn't snitch on Tyler at Spring Fling was because Justin helped him escape and he's done him wrong enough. This results in Tyler not killing Bryce. But Tyler was the one who found Bryce's body because he was going to commit suicide when he discovered Bryce on the pier. This confirms my initial prediction of what Tyler's answer machine meant being correct, because Bryce had to have seen some atonement in confronting Monty on Tyler's behalf. Once Tyler no longer was a suspect, Monty became the main target, especially after Bryce admitted to having Justin's back. At this point, it's a suicide or a De La Cruz special, because Zach just doesn't seem like a killer. In fact, Zach is only against Monty because he's the new captain of the football team. But Zach looks very suspicious for storming off after they figured out Bryce was bludgeoned, not shot. This throws a minor plot twist into the story, but not really, because Tyler was ruled out before it was revealed to be a beating over a gunshot. A beating suggests it was personal. Who had a more personal problem with Bryce than Zach? Especially when you add Chloe into the mix. The deputy rules the case an official homicide, and that springs Alex into action to warn everyone about the drugs that were found at the scene of the crime. Then episode 4 ends. Episode 5 starts off with Justin acting very suspicious in front of Clay by dismissing his fingerprints possibly being at the scene of the crime to speed up the conversation. Because Justin was in such a rush, it conveyed that he was anxious to get on with something that most likely involves the guy who keeps visiting him, which I think was his mom's boyfriend, but I could be wrong. Now, the dude's name ended up being revealed as Seth, but at this moment, I didn't know his name was Seth at all. I'm like, who the heck is this guy? He looked a lot like the guy who chose to fight Kevin Porter in season 2. That's what he looked like, but I don't know if that's the same guy. Now, either way, we last saw Justin pay him off after he accused Justin of killing Bryce earlier. Meaning the writers want us to look at Justin sideways, so he most likely isn't the killer at all. And since Bryce spoke highly of him as well, he's Teflon. Justin walks away from Clay and tells him he doesn't care about the fingerprints. The reason why this was key to take with me is because Justin is the only person left who can speak to the good side of Bryce, well, besides Ani the bedwench. Since the beginning of the show, Justin has always been from a poor, broken home, and Bryce was the rich best friend that looked out for him. His character's moral compass was based on the necessity of shelter by choosing Bryce for so long. But as he got older and matured, he knew he couldn't be affiliated with him anymore, especially if he wanted a future with Jessica, seeing as she was raped by Bryce. But that doesn't mean he can't speak to the positive side of Bryce, because at the same time, this season has been more sympathetic towards him than Tyler. We must not ignore that irony. Episode 5 is all about the drugs that were found at the scene of the crime, which appear to be tiny bottles of steroids that were linked to Bryce. While most people always buy from Bryce, this other guy who happened to sell to Alex tipped the police off to his connect, which became the lead suspect in who killed Bryce. While this is happening, Ani and Clay begin arguing about whether she is doing all this investigating for Clay or for Bryce. Thank you, Clay. Finally, Clay's balls dropped, and he said, listen, is you doing this for me or for him? Because it matters. You feel me? I was so happy to see Clay say this. Ani decides to say she's doing it for both of them. Terrible answer, Ani. Imagine if a guy said that to a girl. Are you doing this for me or for her? I'm doing it for both of you. The girl would never take that excuse and let it fly. But because this is a woman, Clay gotta let it fly. Okay. But anyway, this proves she probably smashed Bryce or wanted to despite knowing he was damaged goods, under the premise that she had to because she couldn't ruin her mom's job. More cynical undertones would be created from this outcome. And the outcome came to fruition later, but let's not bury the lead. Let's not ruin things, okay? Let's continue, because I think I got you on a roll right now with how I'm explaining this season. Now, Ani and Clay confronted Monty after finding a bloody tool in his Jeep. And I thought it was so funny how they snuck in this man's car. He had one of them Jeeps with the plastic windows. They literally just peeled off the plastic window part. It just ran up in this man's trunk and took a bloody object from it, okay? Now they took this bloody tool from his Jeep. Now, they didn't take it out of there, but they saw it, right? And then they put it back in there once they saw it there. And then they tried to use that as, oh, that was the weapon he used to kill Bryce because Bryce was beaten to death. He wasn't shot, blah, 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 blah. That felt, it kind of played a role in making us more suspicious of Monty's character. And there's a lot of stuff to get into with Monty later, by the way, y'all. So let's continue. Because, boy, there's a reason. I'm not even going to spoil it. Let me shut up. Okay, so then the flashback kicks in and confirms Monty is moist by showing him fall in love with a guy at a party. Oh my God. See, people's like, Dave, you gotta stop calling it 13 Reasons Moist. No, I'm gonna keep calling it 13 Reasons Moist. Because for whatever reason, they can always find a new gay character to make out of a brown or black person. But they can't give us one straight black guy. Come on, bruh. And when you really break it down, there's not even a straight brown guy on this show. Because Monty's gay now, and he was the only brown guy left. It was Tony and Monty. Those were the only Latino main characters. And now both of them are gay. So y'all can act like the agenda isn't real, but the proof is in the pudding. They're making all these other people gay, and then they letting all these white dudes be straight, but be hella vile and evil. But they keep getting vagina somehow. I mean, I'm just keeping it a bean with y'all, man. It doesn't make any sense, bro. It doesn't make any sense. But let me get back to Monty, cause Monty gotta get this smoke, cause I was so confused about this, man. I was like, where are we going with this? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. Okay, so let's start off from the top again, all right? So a flashback kicks in, and it basically is Monty going to a Hillcrest-based party with Bryce. Bryce brings him in. Now, allegedly, Bryce always knew Monty was gay, okay? Now, Monty, he starts eyeing this dude. They come across each other. I mean that figuratively, not literally. And they meet each other in a bedroom. And then Monty just keeps staring at the guy to the point where the dude gets the cue and he just closed the door. So they get it in a little bit. Now, it wasn't nothing too crazy. It was just Monty getting some head. But at the end of the day, the dude tops the ball. Monty's happy. He dips out. But on his way out the party, he sees the guy again. And the guy walks up to him in front of other people. And he kind of like, hey, man, I hope to see you around sometime. And he kind of blew up Monty's spot. So Monty snaps, and he literally beats this dude into the ground in front of everybody. It was so funny. It was so funny, bro. So basically, oh man, this is funny. So he's a gay bully who raped Tyler, the photographer, with a mop stick, all because he ruined a baseball season they no longer seem to care about during football season. This makes no sense, ladies and gentlemen. This man was so mad about the baseball season being ruined, but in this season, no one even talks about baseball. Like, it's so weird. Then Monty beats the crap out of the same guy who gave him head just because he spoke to him in front of everyone else on the porch. So Bryce offers the guy $5,000 as hush money, but he raises it to $7,000 under the premise that he gets it all. All of these people around the situation have no idea about the gay stuff that just occurred. Not even Alex, who was there only for the drugs, most likely. And that's the funny part. Alex was at that party too on the low, but he was just there for the steroids. And you come to find out, he's out here taking steroids just because he has a weak body after shooting himself in the head in season 1, and he felt like he had to get stronger. And when you get to the end of the season, it starts to make a lot more sense why he did this, okay? Now, let's continue, because I don't want to get into the spoiler zone just yet. Let's keep building this story. Now, Clay and Ani take Alex's phone while he's working out at the gym and see who he's been paying for drugs. I think it makes zero sense, even for teenagers, to be sending money over a cash app when it leaves a paper trail to illegal operations, but I digress. This ends up tipping off Clay and Ani to a woman named Melody Scott who started getting broken off by this money. Now, they turn out and find out that this woman, Melody Scott, was a prostitute that Bryce introduced Alex to. Okay? So that was a little weird. Now, at this moment, I'm just happy they didn't make another character moist and is showing something heterosexual on my television. So I didn't really have a problem with this prostitute being incorporated into the story, because it at least answered questions as to why Bryce and Alex got close. But eventually you start to find out that Bryce was basically using Alex, right? Because Bryce could get him discounts on all these drugs, and Bryce was thirsty for friendship. So what he would do is he would basically treat Alex like he treated Justin for all those years. Oh, you're going to be my junkie friend? You're going to have to jump when I say jump, be where I say to be, and you can get these discounts on all these drugs. That's basically how he treated Alex. Now, as this is happening, Bryce is also getting Alex hooked on cocaine and making him be his friend to get it at a discount. After breaking into the wrong house and scaring a kid, though, Alex stayed away from Bryce. This is when Alex said the line that describes 13 Reasons Why as a series: nobody is clean. This season is so weird because it's directed like the last one, without the... this season is so weird because it's directed like the last one. Without the tapes, there is no method of storytelling that doesn't feel all over the place, though. The tidbits we get for dealing with flashbacks often are rarely worth the time spent in them to explain how people feel later. For example, why did Ani act like she never knew Alex was around Bryce when she's around that house all the time? Surely she would have seen them kicking it within the 3 weeks he was partying with him. After all, that was the purpose of showing Ani cleaning up the cocaine dust, to show that she was around during the time of the flashback in question. So why isn't she telling Clay this information before Alex does? It's as if she's willing to waste time if she can remain in control of the information. As if she's the apex narcissist of the season. And honestly, I think that's who Ani is, the apex narcissist. Now let's continue. Bryce's grandfather has been on hospice the whole season, but once he found out Bryce died, he blamed the mother for it immediately. The same woman who coincidentally divorced the father and then brought in immigrant slaves to take care of her father. As this is happening, Ani's mother yells a name that suggests more African people are working on the compound. Now, I end up finding out at the end of the season the name that she pronounced would look like Amarat or something like that. That's actually Ani's real name, so she was actually just calling her daughter to come. But at the end of the day, it shows that Ani was one of the slaves because she also had to do what her mom was doing. Now, I can't make this up though. Now, Bryce's funeral comes up and his dad shows up. This sparks a flashback that confirms the indentured servants were indeed employed to the family before the parents split up. So in theory, Ani should have also given more information as well before she transferred schools, but that's another plot hole that gets hidden from plain sight because all they showed was Ani's mom in the flashbacks. In the flashback, Bryce threatens his grandfather because he was criticizing his mom for wanting a divorce from his son-in-law. The grandfather seems very sexist to say the least. This is the only explanation I see that can explain him going off on her for Bryce dying, despite Bryce going off on his own grandfather to defend his mom. It creates a paradox only this solution makes sense of. But peep game at Bryce's mom doing her funeral speech because I found this to be crazy. She said he was capable of hurtful things and deep love. But right after she said deep love, Ani looking like a bed wench at the funeral with her eyes overflowing with tears. I'm like, what is this? She was straight up crying over the idea of Bryce's deep love. Bryce ain't never loved you, Ani. You think because you gave him the box, he loved you? It was deep love? Boy, that dude wanted to... Look, I don't want to spoil nothing, but at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, Ani was controlling him by being on top of him, and the guy wasn't getting nothing out of it because he's used to dominating women by raping them. So what did he do? He said, oh, I want to try it a different way with me on top. Can we try it this way? He wasn't even getting anything out of it unless he could control her body, but she over here crying about his deep love. Bruh, they tapping into some crazy bedwind spirits with this season, I gotta tell you. Now let's continue, okay? But this girl was only around Bryce for a few months at the most, so why is she so deeply affected by his death? No matter how you shake it, she is cooning it up over Bryce here. I'd argue she's in love with someone dead, just like Clay was with Hannah, while other women kept throwing it at him the past couple of seasons. Then the funeral gets interrupted by feminist protesters with the worst timing possible, and it triggers Bryce's dad to snap and order police to arrest them. A flashback ensues with Bryce outing his dad for having another family outside of theirs. Ani was there to hear that as well. And this was after the divorce was first proposed, meaning Ani was there well before the divorce was finalized. So there was a massive plot hole in why we are just now seeing her this season, because now they have removed the excuse that she came as soon as the dad left. They are creating intricate plot holes to cover up more obvious plot holes. But of course, only recency bias radio points this out. Now, Bryce the Predator is portrayed as some white knight just because he stood up to his dad and his grandfather for his mom. But this is the same guy who raped multiple women. That ain't enough to let him off the hook by a long shot. But it was just enough to buy him time and buy Ani more benefit of the doubt for bucking her eyes so much on his behalf. She thirsty as hell. We need to get her some core water, coach. Aight? You feel me? Keep the pH levels high. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm talking that hot stuff. But let's continue. Ani appears to have been living in the area for a while but didn't stay in school. For her to be this smart while doing only slave work is superhuman. She managed to work her way in all these social environments simply by being attached to Clay, who she acknowledged was at the center of all of this, meaning she definitely exposed and confessed on herself through narration that she was using Clay to get to all these other people who were affected by Bryce. Now, you would think people who have gone through what this cast has would be less trustworthy of an outsider, especially someone who is close to Bryce living on the same compound plantation. But the writers forced all of them to have a relationship with Bryce after what happened in court to justify Ani being accepted so quickly. I mean, at the end of the day, bro, they did so much damage control. They have so many plot holes written into this to explain why this bed wench is so dang sympathetic for Bryce. I mean, if y'all can do all of this work to cover up all these other plot holes, how about you just give us a straight black character? Is that too much to ask that doesn't have self-hate? You mean to tell me there ain't no character like that in Liberty High? Come on, man. Y'all BSing us. Now, this is an example of a season that puts too much thought into it to check too many liberal boxes. But they forget to put a single straight black man in the season. All we get is Tony's gay boyfriend Caleb the whole season. That's literally the only black guy in the season besides Jessica's dad, who had a one-episode cameo. And maybe Kevin Porter, who had another one-episode cameo. You feel me? We don't even see Jessica's dad during a season where she's being a thought for all these white men. But last season, they went out of their way to show a scene of her dad having a problem with her talking to one black guy. So that shows you the agenda. But see, that's a callback to my initial video. And by the way, I hope y'all watch that video, because bruh, when I tell you everything I accuse these writers of being in that video, they proved it in this season. They definitely proved it. But let's continue. I mentioned this in my first video about why this show sucks, and I think it aged very nicely, so you should check it out if you haven't already. But I'm saying this to prove they are against the straight black men on this show. All these black women choosing white men, but they won't show no black men piping down snow bunnies for a reason. They know one is acceptable to their core fan base and the other one isn't. It also isn't lost on me that now that Monty is confirmed to be in the closet, all the Latino men on this show are gay as well. So any man of color on this show is gay. The only men that aren't gay are white. You can't tell me that isn't by design. Where is the equality in that? But you notice, the LGBT, the Alphabet Army, they not mad about that. And see, that's the crazy thing. They allow all these people of color to be the face of that community, but only the white folks run the community. And y'all are too dumb to see y'all being used. But let's continue. Monty throws the F word around as much as Eddie Murphy did on Delirious this season when describing other gay men. Let's really keep it a buck. He says that word a lot. And it got to a point where his dad called him one. And I was like, damn. But anyway. Tony gets charged for the murder of Bryce, which sparks a flashback proving he did sell his Mustang to Bryce for a price he couldn't refuse. Now, we later find out that the reason why Bryce did that was because Bryce felt some guilt about something, and we'll get into that in a second, but let's continue. cops put Tony in a position to have to basically take the rap or else his dad would get deported. Tony ended up getting off because more evidence came up. However, his family still got deported by ICE because Bryce's family snitched on them. So that was messed up, all right? Now, this is really messed up, but this is realistic. The cops treat black and brown people much differently. For example, Alex's dad never treated Clay as bad as he treated Tony, and Clay was the suspect Bryce's own mom recommended, showing the police on this show jump on code too. You can see the disappointment on the policeman's face when they uncovered the surveillance footage from season 2 when Justin stopped Clay from shooting Bryce. But they are so much nicer about the interrogation when it's Clay, even if he had a gun in the video. But Ani was asked a great question by Bryce's mom here and denied it poorly. She was asked if Clay and Bryce fought over her. She said no. Then when the officer asked if Ani reminds Clay of Hannah, she says no, but stares at a black coffee mug. Hold on, I messed that up. Hold on, let me re-say that, y'all. So, the officer asked Clay if Ani reminded him of Hannah. He said no, but he stared at a black coffee mug. The reason why this is important to mention is because they use the black coffee mug as symbolism to show she can't be like Hannah, Clay, because she's black. You see what I'm saying? I'm putting you on game with how symbolism works in cinematography. Now let's continue. Keep this in mind because the black mug represents Clay's inner conflict to choose a woman of another race that Hannah represents to him, the perfect girl. Philosophically speaking, Clay has to get over Hannah to truly get into Ani, while Ani has to get over a now dead Bryce to truly get into Clay. See, I'm truly breaking down all of this psychological warfare going on. You got the bed wench trying to overcome her self-hate, and then you got the guy with no self-confidence trying to get over pining on someone who is dead at this point to be able to jump that hurdle and finally start an interracial relationship. But at the end of the day, Ani's not worth your trouble. You should have got with Sherry when you had the chance, coach. I would have at least have supported that a little bit more because it was a little bit more natural. But anyway, turns out Clay was jealous about Ani lying to him. Ani had always told him she didn't really hang with Bryce. So once he found out the truth, he most likely confronted Bryce, thinking he could also atone for what happened to Hannah symbolically. Jessica tells Ani about Clay being obsessed with Hannah, and it freaks out Ani. This leads Ani down a path of asking everyone about Clay's past. And this is when I knew Ani wasn't sure. But that's neither here nor there. Now, the officer pushes the interrogation and tells Clay that Ani had underwear found in Bryce's vehicle. Uh-oh. This is when all of Ani's dirty laundry literally got put on Front Street. Now, this suggests she was getting it cracking consensually with Bryce. Clay denies her doing this with him, but all signs point towards her letting him beat. Clay during this episode shows signs of post-traumatic stress disorder and fatal attraction. Even when Zach and Ani bonded over their mothers being so strict on housekeeping, Clay was jealous. But what doesn't make any sense is why Ani was attracted to Bryce. Every time she's around him, he's either on coke, breaking furniture, threatening family members, or drinking liquor. He has done absolutely nothing to be worthy of the box at all, let alone her presence, but she basically throws it at him under the premise of a friendship. Ani admits Clay was invested in their friendship differently than she was, implying that she was friend-zoning the crap out of him. Let's keep it all the way a buck tonight. But if that's the case, why does she take her clothes off down to her panties just for him to measure her for the funeral? She capping on the low. Clay ain't the only one thirsty here, she is too. Ani is the queen of mixed signals. She lies to the police and says she never kissed Clay even though she did. She says Clay is more into her than she was into him, but let him see her in her underwear, and after she kissed him, all it took was for Bryce to pull up, and all of a sudden she wanted to stay away from Clay. That told me she was choosing, cause otherwise, why would that make a difference in when she chose to get out of Clay's car? After all, she's the one stalling for time during the season cause she knows the most information about Bryce, but is withholding it from the police. See, more facts, man. I'm putting this girl on blast tonight. And see, I want y'all to peep game at that scene that Justin went in on Ani for smashing Bryce, because this is Clay's brother at this point now, Justin the Junkie. He gotta defend his mans. You feel me? And the fact that his current girlfriend is also the girl he allowed to get raped, this man, he gotta be on this new path of redemption too. You know, there's a lot of people who need to redeem themselves. Alright? Now, it feels like they allowed Justin to redeem himself just by claiming he was a victim too. But let's keep it all the way a bean, Justin. If you truly was a victim your whole life of sexual assault, you definitely shouldn't have let your girl get raped though. But see, that's another conversation no one's willing to have yet, because Justin's a white character. You feel me? If that was built into the fabric of who he was before 13's Reasons Why he even started, then the minute Bryce kicked him out of that room, he should have kicked the damn door down to get his girl out of there. End of discussion, if that's what truly happened to you in your past. But we're going to get to that another time. But that came to my head. But anyway, so yeah, Justin went in on Ani for smashing Bryce because he was defending his homeboy Clay. And he know Clay is feeling Ani, but he know Ani is playing him for a fool. You feel me? So he went ahead and went in on her for smashing Bryce, and she didn't have no witty comeback for it. And in fact, it's pretty funny. Every time someone approaches Ani in an aggressive way, like they know already that she smashed Bryce, she has no witty comeback. Her accent isn't as strong. She no longer is this rocket scientist brainiac into robotics anymore. She becomes this average person with limited dialogue because she's a flawed character based on a plot hole and a plot device to begin with, and on a plantation. So at the end of the day, when Justin starts applying that full court pressure on her, she ain't really had no excuses. You feel me? And that shows guilt in itself. Then Jessica goes back to the feminist favela. That's what I call the student council president chamber. It's the feminist favela. The Fugazi feminist favela, bro. So Jessica goes back there to tell them off for interrupting the funeral. Because like I mentioned a second ago, these mugs, they protested a funeral. Like, what are y'all doing? Like, y'all ain't got no chill. But she gets bodied by this lesbian girl who wants all the smoke. And this lesbian girl, I mean, she was on the non-binary side of the game. She tried way too hard to run things, okay? Now, Shorty straight up tells her, who are you to tell us how to protest when you are back sleeping with Justin, the man who will let you get raped? I was like, jeez, blood, jeez. Combo breaker. Flawless victory. She got at Jess' head when she came with her neck. Jess, she was snatching wigs, Jess. Jess ain't really had no comeback for that, the same way Ani ain't had no comeback for Justin. It's funny, when you bring the smoke to they know, and they ain't expecting it, they make all the black characters on this show come off very bad. But anyway, and while this is happening, the football team is destroying Justin for being with Jess simultaneously, who wanted to shut down athletics. And see, that's the part of this I really didn't agree with. Jessica became convinced that the only way to stop the toxic environment of male sports is to stop male athletics. And I'm thinking, Jessica, let's be real here. The majority of y'all women be choosing on these athletes because they are the athletes. They're the ones idolized by the school. They are the representatives that go to war with other schools' representatives. They are the champions, if you will. If you were to remove athletics, Jessica, you wouldn't even be into Justin if athletics were removed. You might be still into Alex, but you wouldn't be into Justin. So it's really weird. You're almost spiting yourself, just to go to the extreme of trying to make sure another Bryce can't be created. But it seemed like no one else is as rich as Bryce is, so there won't be another Bryce. You feel me? Like, you can't just chalk everyone off as a potential Bryce candidate when only Bryce has a plantation for a mansion. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, let's continue. Clay confronts Ani in the robotics room and goes crazy on her. He mentions how she knows all this tea but won't tell him until after he finds out from someone else. He tells her about Bryce having semen on her lingerie and accusing her of sleeping with him, but once again, Ani does a terrible job of denying it. Ani's excuse for this is so typical. She says Bryce didn't treat her like a lonely girl and that's why she was around him. What? That doesn't even make sense. You followed Bryce around his house like a lonely girl. She could have left that crib at any moment and did something else, but she chose to go find Bryce in the house. It even got to a point where she admitted the house was empty, and that's what made them start having sex together. So how can you say he didn't treat you like a lonely girl, but your excuse to have sex with him was you were in a huge empty house alone with him? You see what I'm saying, y'all? This girl is contradicting herself. These are the Bedwench Chronicles. They need to change the name of this show to the Bedwench Chronicles, bruh. On everything I love, bruh. On everything I love, bruh. You know when someone say that they really mean it. They really feel it, you know? Now, I mean, she was the one who looked for him in a house full of slaves, whether he was sober or not. She was lonely, but she wanted him. She was his bedwench. Why else would she get out of Clay's car as soon as Bryce pulled up after she kissed him? It's common sense. Also, if Ani knew how Clay felt, why didn't it come across her mind that Bryce could be using her like he used his other victims? Ding, ding, ding. What is it about this guy Bryce that makes him capable of 4th, 5th, and 6th chances? But Clay, he can't get his thing wet once. But y'all gonna let Bryce just go through the whole school. Like, y'all letting this man go crazy. This man is being enabled to Dirty Mac. Meanwhile, you got a perfectly nice guy in Clay who has your back, who is just as intelligent as you, and even you, Ani, show that good guys finish last. See, that's the saddest part about this all. This is a black girl who isn't even in the position to choose who she sleeps with, and she still chose who she slept with because a guy was living in the same plantation as her. I mean, it's astonishing. I mean, why is this girl, Ani, lying at a police station over consensual sex with a known rapist? Why does she have so much self-hate? She basically explained it like they started having sex just because they both were in a lonely house together. Right after saying Clay was wrong for assuming she was lonely. They made every black girl a cum dumpster for white men on this show. It's a damn shame. And we don't know if this is learned behavior. For all we know, the dad could have been smashing Ani's mom. But no one's talking about that though. No one's talking about that though. You feel me, coach? What if the reason why they got the divorce was because the mama walked in on the guy basically on a power trip with Ani's mom? See, that could be a deleted scene we don't know about because Ani's mom was way too cool with pimping out her daughter as long as it was with white men. Like, you gotta ask these questions. She learned this behavior from somewhere. You feel me? Now let's continue. So on one hand, Ani helps Jessica get over being raped by introducing her to sex toys, but then has sex with her rapist to help him get his groove back? Her motivations contradict each other to the point where she's portrayed as some slave nympho immigrant girl that lets guys pipe just cause she's under the same roof as them. Bryce wakes up next to her and even says she should get up cause her mom will be up any moment, and this chick said give me about 5 minutes. This is straight thought behavior from Ani here. She's talking like she knew it wasn't right, but couldn't resist it. Like she's addicted to the white man. This is a very dangerous message to show young black girls. Now, in episode 7, Kevin Porter, the counselor / dean from seasons 1 and 2, returns to speak to officers about Clay and Bryce. Now, at first, it seemed like Kevin Porter was working with the feds to screw Clay over as the culprit who killed Bryce, but it turns out he was pulling a double bluff on everyone, trying to bring in tons of kids that would speak highly on Clay's integrity. That way, Clay wouldn't be he wouldn't be a person of interest. Now, it backfired a little bit because, Clay, he's Clay. But at the end of the day, you feel me. But let's continue. At this point, Ani doesn't trust him at all. She even snuck into his bedroom to gather information on Hannah Baker, okay? So Ani is out here sneaking. She's breaking and entering into Clay's bedroom to gather information on Hannah Baker because she's so damn thirsty and whipped by Bryce. Okay? I'm putting y'all up to speed right now. That's what she did. Now, let me ask y'all this question. If this is the same girl who ran from a protest because she was scared of being locked up, okay? But this is the same girl who ran to the police to snitch on people. Why is this the same girl who all of a sudden has no fear of being locked up, sneaking into someone's room? You see that? Ani's behavior isn't that of someone who is black and aware of who they are in this country, but she's aware enough to know to only be with white men? You see what I'm saying? It's like they want to build her up as this person who's socially aware, but her actions do not reflect her wording. Now let's continue. Turns out Kevin Porter was the fall guy for the entire Hannah controversy. He was fired for the school to move on. And since he choked Bryce in the bathroom during season 2, he is now being held under a barrel by the Walker family as blackmail. But since he choked Bryce didn't want his help as a social worker, even though he volunteered to help him rehabilitate. A flashback then ensues, and it turns out Ani went to Claremont Prep before going to Liberty because Bryce tells Kevin Porter this as he tells him his reason for wanting to get better. Now, for all we know, she could have never went to Claremont Prep, and this could have been a lie Bryce made, because Bryce, he lies a lot in this season that doesn't get checked. You feel me? In fact, they allow other people to say Bryce never lies when he's lied several times this season. But let's continue. Kevin Porter relays this information to Clay to make sense out of Bryce and Ani, but at this point of the story, Kevin Porter doesn't know who Ani is yet. So really, he's just explaining about Bryce and why he was helping him in the first place, so Clay doesn't expect he flipped on him. So it turns out Bryce is liking sex with Ani, but he doesn't like it unless he's in a dominant position. Kind of like how Jessica only likes it in a dominant position after being a victim. But when you take into account that Ani didn't have sex with Bryce until after she kissed Clay, it shows she wanted to make Bryce jealous before she smashed. Further proving the good guy always finishes last. Even when the girl is smart enough to know better, she doesn't listen to her intuition. Kevin Porter offers Bryce some help so he can do right by the girl. Then time skips to the future when Kevin Porter drops the bomb on Clay and tells him to ask Tyler about Monty, the guy who penetrated him with the mop stick. This leads to Clay asking Tyler, and Tyler breaks down before explaining what really happened at the end of season 2. Now that Clay knows the truth, he has to do something about it because now he knows why Tyler almost shot up Spring Fling Call of Duty style. Tyler then tells Clay he told Bryce about what Monty did weeks before his death, and that was the last time he heard from him alive. Clay confronts Monty and immediately is pointed towards Justin, who allegedly fought Bryce at homecoming the night he died. Now here's the thing. The truth came out, and when you watch the final episode, you realize, wait a minute, Justin never fought Bryce, so that was a plot hole. In fact, Justin was the one who got Clay off of Bryce. So in reality, Justin saved Bryce. So I don't know what Monty was talking about there. Now, Monty was probably just lying to Clay, but the fact that they put all of these irresponsible lies into the dialogue because they can't think of any good dialogue to put in there that's more interesting, it shows that these writers were just looking for a way to stretch out the season because they knew this was the last hurrah, okay? That's just what it was. They had to stay to the 13 episode theme, all right? So they stretched it out. Now, like I said, so Clay confronts Monty. Monty tells him a lie, but he does tell him the truth in this. He tells him to check Justin's bag for a shaving cream container. And the reason why he told him to check this is because he knows for a fact that Justin uses an electric shaver. When you have an electric shaver, you don't need shaving cream. That leads Clay on to go and investigate. And when he does investigate the shaving cream container, he finds a damn bottle of Oxycontin pills. So then this starts his own new segment of it's kind of like a continuation of the drugs thing with Alex, but now it's more focused on Justin. And then that incorporates this guy Seth in, and let's get into that. So Pretty much, Justin lies about where he got the drugs from in order to buy himself time by saying he found it in Bryce's bedroom. Now, Ani was so sure there's no way he could have found those drugs because the feds came and they sniffed everything through, so they had to clean everything out. Now, it turns out Justin actually only stole Bryce's watch, but he used that watch to trade it for some drugs anyway. So, I mean, same difference really, but he did lie on Bryce. So this is once again them going out of their way to say, see, people take advantage of people even when they are rapists. Sometimes they're not always doing wrong, but they've done wrong. So they don't get benefit of the doubt from me. But let's continue. So Clay finds out that couldn't have been possible because Ani knows Bryce changed his ways before. He changed his ways for Ani before he died. Now, Clay becomes the number one person of interest after a press conference by the police. As this is happening, Justin is also missing because he's dealing with his own guilt of knowing he's being investigated if Clay is. This leads to Clay reverting back to who he was in season 1 with no friends. Alex tells Justin that Jess deserves to know the truth, so he tells Jess he cheated on her at homecoming, effectively ending their relationship. But what remains unclear is whether or not he actually cheated. This guy, who's finally revealed as Seth, shows up to collect bounty on a debt of $2,000. Now, Justin gets locked up for it. Justin gets locked up for it though, which doesn't make any sense because the guy clearly fled the scene of the crime. Why would the police lock up Justin and let Seth get away? That was the thing that didn't make any sense about this scene. Also, why did Justin need Bryce to bail him out on a misdemeanor for being high if he swallowed all the evidence? I get he didn't want to let the Jensens down, but going back to Bryce while still smashing Jessica just further proves this guy Justin didn't deserve her to begin with. But once again, black women are written to be sexual objects in this show. Now let's continue. Bryce shows up with the money to pay off Seth. Seth pretty much threatens Bryce, and Bryce throws that smoke back, making it very plausible he could have had something to do with his death. Justin even says Seth may be responsible, leading them to search for clues. They find Bryce's watch in one of Seth's warehouses, and Seth finds them. They threaten to involve the police, but then Seth tells them Justin, the junkie, traded Bryce's watch for more drugs, showing Clay he can't really trust Justin because each person he considers family he steals from. Justin goes in the bathroom to snort a line but acts like he's about to take a piss. Clay walks in and catches him getting high. Now Justin has to come completely clean or he may burn this bridge for good and lose his family, his new family. As fate would have it, he stole the watch the day of the funeral, not the oxy, then traded the watch for fentanyl from Seth. But the oxy itself was given to him by Bryce. But what Justin doesn't acknowledge is the fact that Bryce shouldn't have been giving him drugs after paying off his debt. A real friend makes you go cold turkey after that, but Bryce wanted a friend so bad he was willing to compromise what Justin had with the Jensen family to keep Justin close to him. Clay calls to get Justin help and episode 9 ends. Now, episode 10 begins and Hannah's mom arrives in town to answer questions. She was in town around the same time Bryce first went missing and even lied about her whereabouts initially. Turns out she called Bryce and left a message on his answer machine. But she mentioned something very true though. The police force is putting way more work towards solving how Bryce died than they did in convicting him of rape. This is facts, and it also shows Bryce's family is behind this. Now, Bryce's family is painted in such a rich, magnanimous light that they seem like the exact type of family that would have only black people working in their home. Hannah's mom not only contacted Bryce, but she also called Jessica and all the other people who were close to her daughter besides Clay. She gives Jess words of encouragement to push on. Clay seems really interested in what she thinks of him, but he isn't in a rush to contact her either. As this is happening, Zach and Alex want to clear Clay's name. Zach seems to have an angle of keeping Alex close to stay in the loop with what his cop dad tells him about the case. But Alex is set on working with Caleb, Tony's boyfriend, in the gym. If you remember, Zach and Alex were the two who had that gay scene when Alex was depressed in season 2. Alex was the one who had a boner from wrestling Zach. proving Alex most likely is in the closet as well, but these writers seem to have forgotten that happened during this scene. But they did create a joke about boners later, so it at least showed a little bit of self-awareness by the writers. But by making Alex work with Caleb, a gay man, over Zach with this context implies Alex doesn't want to be around Zach because he got the boner around him. I can't prove this, and the plot holes are big enough, but this is the only explanation here. Now, Hannah's mom reveals to Clay Tony's family got deported because the Walker family may have snitched on them to ICE. Now, this is what I spoke on a little earlier. It's all coming back full circle. This infuriates Tony, of course. So Hannah's mom tells him to confront Tony. When he does, Tony admits to confronting Bryce on his family's behalf. But notice how in the flashback, Bryce goes out of his way to mention his grandfather being a racist. So why would a racist have a black staff working round the clock to keep him alive? Because the Walker's housing complex is a damn plantation. And this does explain why the grandfather loves the dad so much. I'm talking about Bryce's dad. They are both racist. And only after the grandpa got sick and the father left did Ani have the empty house to smash Bryce in. It's almost like Ani was obsessed with the thought of gutter sex taboo. Tony becomes convinced Bryce only spent twice as much for his Mustang out of guilt for getting his family deported by ICE. Bryce admits that's why he did it. But luckily for Tony, the extra money he got for the car he did use to get his family out, and they ended up living happily ever after in what appears to be Mexico. But I can't really quote that for certain. But it turns out his dad was the one behind it, not Bryce. His journey to atonement leads him to asking Tony if he can listen to the tapes. So Tony decides to listen to the tapes, but next to Bryce to fulfill his promise to Hannah of allowing every single person who was mentioned in the tapes to hear the tapes. Now, after listening to all the tapes, Bryce now wants to speak to the Baker family. He asks Tony if he could speak to the mom after Tony accidentally tells him he saw her a few days ago. What doesn't make any sense to me here is why Tony wants to help Bryce speak with her. Even though he told him to stay away from her, he still tried his best to get her to speak to him, to a degree. Jessica finds out the news from Clay and won't allow Junkie Justin to break up with her. It's amazing how many chances these white guys get, as no straight black men magically are in the script. This show claims to be about bouncing back from trauma, but they never learn from the trauma enough to change their ways. And another thing that doesn't make sense is how Ani is still narrating the story when Clay has given her the cold shoulder for the last 3 episodes. How is she privy to this information? That's another plot hole by the writers. They try so hard to make her the new Hannah that they are lacking continuity in the story to keep Ani at the forefront of it. On the night of the homecoming game, for whatever reason, during the time when Clay isn't trusting Ani, he decides to let her hear a message on his answer machine of Hannah's mom wishing Bryce was dead. Why would you let her hear that, Clay? I mean, it made no sense. Because all that did was back up why Ani suspected Hannah's mom of killing Bryce later, okay? Now, this information Ani snitches to the police about because she had no previous attachment or loyalty to Hannah. So she's willing to believe the worst because she's on Bryce's side. And keep in mind, she was probably still having sex with him at this time when Clay was letting her in on information she had no right to know. Further showing she was using Clay to fulfill her own agenda. Every opinion she has of Hannah's mom are based on secondhand information she learned from someone else. For her to speak with so much confidence about her being a suspect shows me that Ani is fake as hell. The moment we've all been waiting for this season finally is shown with Clay confronting Bryce the day of the homecoming game. Bryce tells Clay Ani isn't into having feelings and that lovey-dovey stuff. Now, to paint a picture for y'all, if y'all didn't see this scene, Clay is showing up to the Walker family plantation with flowers to give Ani to invite her to be his homecoming date. As this is happening, Bryce literally pulls up and tells him, oh, Ani's not into that. She's not the romantic type. Like, he's basically just squashing his balls a little bit. You know what I'm saying? He's he's letting him know this is just like Hannah all over again, bro. She chose me, not you. He was really pushing Clay's buttons to get Clay to blow up. And this is the exact scene that I mentioned earlier where Bryce's mom overheard everything, but she never approached Ani with any of this information. This is that scene, y'all. All right, so of course this triggers Clay, because right before this at school, Ani told him how to pronounce I love you in Swahili. So Clay now unintentionally has been gaslighted to want smoke with Bryce because he thinks Ani loves him. You see what I'm saying? So Ani is the instigator here, okay? She is the one to blame for this confrontation for leading Clay on. Why tell him you love him at all if you're having sex with another man? Ani is out of pocket no matter how you look at this. Also, it appears Clay didn't go there to confront Bryce at all. He came there with flowers to greet Ani and invite her to be his homecoming date, but Bryce spoiled the occasion. Also, keep in mind, Clay is going up to this housing complex, this plantation, assuming there's a separate house that Ani and her mom live in. He doesn't know these are slave quarters. You feel what I'm saying? So when he walks up with them flowers, he's thinking he's going to be directed to where Ani is when it's all just one house. That's why Bryce pulled up where he was. Think about it, y'all. Bruh, no matter how you shake this, the writers tried their best to try to hide the slave undertone, further proving Ani is to blame for this. And by Bryce saying she isn't an innocent girl and has been around, he told Clay she was a thought, which triggered his Hannah-based PTSD. Bryce even says he's off probation, so beating Clay down wouldn't be a problem, but does tell him he can't keep him from smashing his friend. Then he dares Clay to ask her out, and Clay chickens out like a beta male and throws his dang flowers on the ground. I mean, he just threw a temper tantrum and said, man, skip all this. And as this is happening, Bryce's mom is eavesdropping on it all. Now the question is, if she overheard that, why didn't she ever admit to knowing about Ani and her son being a thing? That's another plot hole. Now, Bryce ends up getting drunk and scaring Ani away by almost forcing her to have sex with him. If this happened, I'm still very confused why Ani cried for this man at his funeral. He almost made you another victim, and you out here defending his honor because he stopped himself at the last second? If you ask me, she used Clay to get with Bryce, and Bryce used her to piss off Clay. It's a toxic love triangle to say the least. Episode 10 ends with the police showing up to Clay's doorstep with a search warrant. Now, episode 11 is all about Clay's phone being used against him. Now, he sent a text to Bryce saying he wanted to kill him after homecoming right before he went missing. So, of course, that made Clay look like, oh, you did it. We knew you had it in you, Clay. It was only a matter of time. Now, he admitted to sending the text, but said Bryce never threatened him, okay? That tells me Ani most likely left the homecoming game with Bryce after Bryce ruined his chances of asking her out. But here's the thing, y'all. That's not the whole story, okay? So, what you're going to hear me break down in episodes 11, 12, and 13, the final 3 episodes, it's going to make sense out of every single note I have taken up until this point. So I hope you have paid attention, because I've tried my best not to spoil who the killer is, and I've tried to leave it up to your interpretation who the killer is based off me providing notes on every character, okay? Now let's continue. Now, So like I said, he sent a text to Bryce saying he wanted to kill him. He admitted to sending the text, but said Bryce never threatened him. And that tells me Ani most likely left the game and Bryce ruined his chances. I mean, it most likely left the homecoming game with Bryce after Bryce ruined Clay's chances of asking her out. Now, Alex is eating with family, and he tells his cop dad that Clay was involved in the fight on the field. But other than that, he didn't see him. Now, this is true. This is factual what Alex is saying. Now, finally, Jessica's black dad shows his face. Now, at this moment, all of the parents are showing up because they're nervous. Because now that Clay is getting the smoke, they're worried their kid's going to get the smoke too. You feel me? So anyway, now, like I said, Jessica's dad shows his face. Now, shouldn't he of all parents have been more involved in this season? I mean, he's the guy... the guy who raped his daughter just died. Why are we just now seeing him in episode 11? I get why we don't see Alex's mom much or Monty's dad, but Jessica's parents were paraded around the first 2 seasons to serve the interracial agenda. But now the agenda is only about black women and white men. So much so, they are hiding Jessica's parents like they are divorced. And Ani's mom finally keeps it G. I mean, we waited 11 episodes for her to just G-check her daughter. She finally does it, and she finally chastises her for being a thought. She aired out her dirty laundry, both figuratively and literally. She even mentions how her having sex with Bryce compromised not only them living on this plantation with the Walker family, but it also could have ruined their U.S. citizenship. But Ani is so sure Bryce would never lie to her, even though he has done nothing to earn this trust from her besides play strip poker. Is the bar that low for you, Ani? Jeez. And why does she act so hard to get when she's in front of Clay? This is what kills me with some women. They are somebody else's cum dumpster, but they make the good guy earn them as if they're worth earning. When in reality, the good guy is what they need to earn instead. You feel me? But in this Me Too era, the woman can do no wrong. You feel what I'm saying, coach? I'm just keeping it a bean with y'all. I think it's a complete double standard, man. And then an awkward scene happens after Ani gets put on blast, where Bryce comes downstairs and has to speak to Ani in front of her mom. When I tell you this was some of the most awkward stuff, because the mom was scared to call out Bryce, because Bryce's family are the slave masters, so she can't go in on him for smashing her daughter. So instead, she just sits there and lets them have this awkward conversation, even though she knows what they've been doing. Which was basically her, she may have went in on her daughter in the scene right before that, but by her not speaking up and letting Bryce know what she knows in fear of what Bryce might do, it once again proved Bryce has too much power on this show. He's got grown women in their 40s scared to check him. And meanwhile, he's allowed to have sex with their daughters with impunity because of the power dynamic. And these people are scared to leave the power dynamic, even though he's using their daughters sexually in the power dynamic. Come on, man. Where did they do this at? Come on, y'all. It was so weird, and the fact that Ani's mom didn't say anything because living on a plantation meant so much to her is a damn shame. Because it means she is willing to pimp out her daughter to stay a house slave. But how did the Walker family manage to smuggle illegals into America while their son was going through the judicial process? If Bryce raped girls and his mom truly felt bad about it, why would she allow a girl to live on their plantation after the father left? None of these questions really get answered because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, Bryce is out here interested in coming back to Liberty for good, and I'm thinking this has to be one of the worst ideas I've ever seen. Like, bro, you got away with the crime after committing it several times. I mean, he admitted he raped 7 to 8 more girls outside of Hannah and Jessica. So he got off for being a 10-time rapist, minimum. And this dude wants to go back to the school, and his mom, who seems to care about his mental state of mind, is talking like she'll look into it? Like, what are you doing? And say, this will let me know his mom is dumb. His mom is dumb. So this sparks the dean and principal who replaced Kevin Porter to speak to Jessica about toning it down with the protest, but she wasn't responsible for that at the time. Remember the protest that came through during the funeral? Jessica didn't lead that. That was the non-binary chick who wants to be the president. That was her doing it, all right? That wasn't Jessica. But Jessica got blamed for it because she's the president. You see what I'm saying? But this guy doesn't care about that. So the dean tells her she will make a public apology or will lose her place as student class president. So then a flashback to homecoming day happens, and Jessica tried to actually get the game canceled. She tried to avoid all of the stuff that ensued after this game. So Jessica, she actually showed herself to be maturing as the season went along, whereas all these other people were just idiots. But that's neither here nor there. This, of course, pisses off Jessica because she can't get the game canceled. So it prompts the principal and dean to tell her Bryce may return to the school, which triggers her to rally up her feminist troops to bring their protest to the homecoming game. And Tyler specifically is happy about this because now he has more allies against the jocks. He doesn't feel alone now. So What confuses me here is Jessica lying to Ani about being with Justin after the homecoming game. Justin broke up with her because of a lie he made up about cheating on her after homecoming. If Ani is truly privy to all the information Clay knows, shouldn't she have been in position to know Jess was lying immediately there? This is another plot hole used to buy time to stretch this season out another 2 episodes. Pay attention. Turns out Bryce told Ani to leave during homecoming, so she did. But in leaving, she went against the protest against rape, meaning she chose Bryce's side over Jessica's, which was black girl tragic, okay? Which explains why she hated Ani after that. And it confirms Ani isn't pro-black. That's why she risked her mom's job just to get some white D on a plantation. I mean, this is all factual. Jessica speaks to Tyler and finds out the truth about what happened to him at spring fling, and it leaves her in tears. They both confide in one another as victims of sexual assault. Then Tyler reveals to Jess that he told Bryce this and how Bryce went to go confront Monty right before he died. Bryce promises to make it so he never has to be afraid of Monty again, but says he won't kill him. Zach goes to Caleb's gym looking for Alex, but spots Tony instead. Tony tells him Alex left a while ago, not knowing his dad got him out of there. Zach is acting very weird because he's so sure Clay didn't hurt Bryce, but he's not saying what he does know. And this is what led all suspicions to point towards Zach has something to do with Bryce dying. Just like Justin and Monty. Seems like the whole football team knows how Bryce died, but nobody else. Jessica confronts Monty before the homecoming game and threatens to out what he did to Tyler without showing her cards fully. She walks up on the Fugazi feminists, and these chicks are already plotting an ambush in the locker room. Jessica gets them to change their approach to be more mindful to the victims, and they agree. Jessica leaves temporarily after getting a text from Bryce before the game. As she's leaving out, Ani is side-eyeing her very suspiciously as if she doesn't trust her. But understand, Ani is supposed to be the campaign manager. But this non-binary chick has been running the whole program without checking in with Ani once because Ani is too busy trying to defend Bryce. Okay? You get what I'm saying? Ani volunteered to be the campaign manager, but she's doing less work than this other girl because she's not focused on the campaign. She's not even focused on rape victims being rehabilitated. She's literally focused on making sure the right story is told about Bryce. That's it. She even kissed Bryce after this meeting. After spying on Jessica getting a text from Bryce, she still kissed Bryce after that. And when Clay saw that, oh, he lost it. But we'll get to that in a second. This proves Ani lost her position, but the writers forgot to show how she lost her position. Bryce goes into the locker room to confront Monty. He threatens to snitch to the cops about all the bad things Monty did in the first 2 seasons if he doesn't leave Tyler alone. From trying to run Clay over, to giving Alex the gun he almost killed himself with, to raping Tyler. Monty is clearly shell-shocked that Bryce is no longer loyal to him anymore. This segues to the game, where the feminist protesters begin to make their presence known. While this is happening, Tyler gets freaked out by the paint and thinks about his trauma. Police show up, and Ani runs away like a punk. But when you keep in mind her legal situation, she probably would be in the same position Tony's family is in with ICE if she had to run from the protest. Now that I know what I know now, y'all, she wouldn't have been locked up from none of that because Bryce's family had police on payroll. So really, she sprinted away for no reason. You feel what I'm saying? She really sprinted away for no reason. Now, Jessica speaks to Ani, and clearly Ani is scared of being arrested. But if that is true, why does she concern herself with an ongoing investigation that was none of her business? And if she's an illegal, shouldn't she have been sent away the moment she was detained? Why is she even the narrator of the season if she isn't a real citizen? Why does the police value the opinion of an illegal? This is another plot hole that doesn't make any sense when you add the context of her fleeing from the protest in episode 11. But whatever Jess said gave Ani the interpretation that they won't be arrested for the crime. Episode 12 begins, and it starts with a thought-provoking question. Do innocent people run away? Clay wakes up for some reason in Tony's house, and Caleb thinks he's guilty of killing Bryce. Now, after watching episode 12 in full, I understand how Clay woke up in there. So basically what happened was a huge brawl broke out after the protest, right? Clay went after Bryce, right? Justin saved him, but Tony and his boyfriend were the ones in the stands, okay? They were the ones who were gonna jump in, but Clay specifically told Tony not to get involved because he would get arrested for it because Tony has felonies on his record. So I'm willing to bet Tony and his boyfriend came, snatched up Clay, and took them in their room to sleep on it for the rest of the night. But if you know what happened the rest of that night, you would know the way Clay ended up back with Tony and his boyfriend, it doesn't really add up chronologically because Clay didn't come straight home after that. He was riding around in his car looking for Bryce. Now, let's continue. So like I said, he wakes up in their crib. Now, Caleb, he's a hater. I mean, he 100% thinks that Tony is an idiot for being so loyal to his friends. Like, he wants Tony to just snitch on these dudes so they can move on with their life. See, that's how gay dudes are, bro. You feel me? Look, all they care about is they love her, and that's it. They don't care about all the people who get affected by the BS. They don't care about none of that stuff. And I thought this was a great representation of how selfish black gay men are, but that's neither here nor there. Now let's continue. This leads to Clay running from them because he can't trust Caleb. He goes to Ani to tell her this is the last time she will see him for a while. And this is basically when Clay decides, hey, I'm finna be on a run because I don't want to get locked up. Now, when you do the math in your head, it makes sense. So he woke up in their crib in the future. So that technically wasn't the morning after the homecoming game. Okay, so I answered my own plot hole question right there. So needless to be said, that wasn't technically a plot hole. But the way that they're jumbling all of these time skips, it's hard to tell when is what. But let's continue. So he goes to Ani and tells her this is the last time she will see him for a while. Of course, Ani, being obsessed with crazy white men, leads her to kissing Clay before she says, I love you back in Swahili. And now her mom knows she is messing with two different guys because she was spying on her with two different men. So now Ani's spot is completely blown up. Liberty have an assembly for homecoming. Now, this is when Jessica really showed her growth as a person. Now, Clay contacts Tyler to tell him to find another ride home after the assembly because he's on the run. Tyler gives the impression that he plans on shooting something up if Clay doesn't show. This gives Jessica the stage to deliver a speech that encouraged all the survivors of sexual assault to come forward. Only after Clay shows up does Tyler come forward. This leads to two more men coming forward, one of which was Justin, who we all believed may have been assaulted by his stepdad. Now we know that also to be true. This was probably the best scene of the season, because it made everyone uncomfortable who benefited from assault and empowered all the victims of assault. But notice how Ani is more focused on a line Jessica said in her speech than she was celebrating what the speech represented and accomplished. Ani is a damn hater. She applauds Jess for being fearless, but with this information, she still picked Jessica as the most likely person to kill Bryce at the start of the season. So she basically used her fearlessness against her to paint her as a murderer. Would a pro-black person really do that? Of course not. The self-hate runs deep with this girl. Telling the school what happened to him bought Tyler tons of respect from the student body. Now there are teammates on the football team snitching on Monty to Tyler voluntarily to save face within the social structure. Zach quits the football team out of guilt because of what was revealed about three of his teammates, but we find out something very soon on why he really quit. I'll get into that in a second, ladies and gentlemen. That assembly flipped the entire school on its head. Justin admits to Jessica that his mama's boyfriend molested him when he was only 5. He even admitted to being a male prostitute when he lived on the streets, further proving this show is full of gay people in disguise. This is exactly why I call it 13 Reasons Moist. And the fact that Jessica wants no other man on this earth but a bisexual junkie all but sums up the agenda of this show, to make minorities look bad and give white privileged people more than enough opportunities to hang themselves. What really doesn't make sense is how they rescheduled the homecoming game after it was canceled due to protests. Now, I know it didn't get rescheduled, but this is how I felt in the moment, so please follow me, because this is how my brain thinks. Because I'm looking like, huh? Like, how are they doing the homecoming game over again when we just saw it break down? They just showed it from another vantage point. All right, now anyway, let's continue. At the homecoming game, everything was going fine until Clay sees Ani with Bryce. He saw Bryce kiss her, and that set it off right there. Now, keep in mind, she don't talk no Swahili with Bryce, but she swaps more bodily fluids with him. Clay, she over here talking another language with you, keeping you in her pocket, just in case it go wrong with Bryce. Boy, you been played, fam. Now, anyway, if I'm Clay, I'd be mad too. But for Ani to kiss this dude and walk away from the game was so bizarre. It was like she felt guilty for kissing him, but did it anyway. This sparks Clay to go follow her to the Fugazi feminist favela where they're planning the protest at halftime. He confronts her specifically about kissing Bryce, and here Ani comes with the excuses again. She claims they aren't friends, but she put her hand on his face before he kissed her. Then she says she was just wishing him luck in the game, but why would she care about the game if she's with the student council feminists who just want to interrupt the game? See, she's contradicting herself again. She keeps contradicting herself to justify her whoring it out. Then she says Bryce misinterpreted her intentions, which sounds a lot like how she referred to Clay misinterpreting her the same way, don't it? Call back. So this is a girl who is incapable of accountability, but she is the one talking the most throughout the season about everyone else not telling the truth. She's a damn hypocrite, coach. She says it was a mistake, so Clay asks if she regrets kissing him. She gives no answer. Then Clay asks if she regrets kissing him as well. Then Ani says it has nothing to do with him. But for a woman who is so sure Hannah's mom killed Bryce, she sure selectively forgets about Hannah when it comes to Bryce and Clay, don't she? It's like she only remembers Hannah when it's convenient to fit her agenda in defending Bryce. Woohoo, we getting her. And see, here's the thing, y'all. Clay kept it straight G with her by saying they can't be cool no more because she don't keep it 100. I mean, at the end of the day, Ani lies to Clay just like she lies to her mother. But you know who's the one person in this season Ani never lied to once? Bryce. Ain't that a mug? She puts Bryce on a higher pedestal than she puts her own damn mom, and without her mom being an indentured servant to Bryce's family, she wouldn't even be in America right now. I can't make this up. Like, this is astonishing. Now, I know they didn't reschedule the homecoming game at all, but what they did do was show the same halftime from Clay's perspective this time, not Jessica's. What doesn't make sense, though, is how sure Ani is of what Clay was thinking during the game. How would she know if she was with the feminists preparing for the protest what was going through Clay's mind? I mean, she told police, oh, Clay was so mad. He was so mad during the entire first half because he saw me kiss him. And he had his mind made up after that protest that he was going to beat up Bryce. You ran away, girl. Soon as the police showed up, you ran away like a runaway slave, girl. How would you know what Clay did to Bryce? You see what I'm saying? So she's saying a lot of things with a lot of conviction that she ain't even sure of. But for whatever reason, that is being taken as Bible scripture. Now, towards the end of this, I'm going to explain why her opinions were taken seriously outside of the obvious of Bryce family paying off police. There's another wrinkle in this that's gonna shock y'all. If y'all haven't seen this season, if y'all have, y'all are waiting on me to talk about this. So I'm gonna get there. So just be patient with me. This is a slow burn. So at the end of the day, coach, all right, Zach ran out onto the field wanting smoke from Bryce. All right, he ended up getting Buddy in a damn rear naked chokehold, okay? And almost had him when Justin ran up and pulled him off. Now, the only thing I'm mad about is Bryce deserving at least one punch in the face for what he did to Hannah and Jessica. And for whatever reason, Justin did not allow Clay to do it. He pulled him off. I would have at least appreciated Justin punching him in the face, but I guess Justin felt like, hey, this man paid $7,000 for me. You know, he paid a debt off for me involving Seth, so I can't punch him in the face. You know, it's almost like because Bryce had nothing that Clay owed him for, him and Clay never could reconcile. But all these other people gave him a pass because they all could use him for something while he was ostracized. It's really weird. It's really weird. But that's high school, bro. A lot of people just use you for stuff. Now, so Clay wasn't really given any chance to punch Bryce. He was only given a chance to really put one hook under his neck and kind of try to choke him a little bit. Now, Clay is in his car mad as hell, and he knows Ani is most likely with Bryce. So he sends him a text saying he's gonna kill him from in front of his house. So this is the moment that the cops were referring to when they said he sent him the text. Now, Clay, he did look very suspicious because he deleted the text after, okay? But at the end of the day, it's what dumb kids do, man. I mean, it's all gonna appear on the satellite or the server and stuff. You can't delete it. And once you send the text, it's there for good, but it is what it is. Now, Zach out of nowhere admits to killing Bryce to Alex, and that completely threw me off. As this is happening, yes, I said it, Zach out of nowhere admitted to killing Bryce. It didn't make any sense. It completely threw me off. As this is happening, Ani goes off on her mom for not trusting anyone to justify her having an open legs policy for any white guy she meets. She storms off and heads to school. Zach is at the police station, ready to confess to murder, when Alex's dad finds what appears to be drug patches in his son's drawer. He gets called to the station to speak to Zach. Zach begins to tell his story about why he killed Bryce. Of course, it begins before the game in the tunnel, with Bryce speaking to Chloe one last time. And what did I say at the beginning of this video? Zach had the most personal problems to beat Bryce to death because of Chloe. Whenever you add a girl to it, I mean, hell, this is why we suspected it was Clay, right? Because of the girl involved. So it makes perfect sense. And Zach has the body type to beat Bryce into a bloody pulp. So it made sense. So I was really intrigued by this. So let's continue. Chloe tells Bryce about the abortion she had with his baby, but towards the end, she makes the mistake of telling him Zach helped her get through it. Soon as they got on the field, Bryce accused Zach of stealing his girlfriend from him. Now keep in mind, Bryce knew Chloe wasn't with him no more, and the moment he knew she wasn't with him no more, that was the minute Ani started throwing it to Bryce. So Bryce shouldn't even be mad about none of this. Hell, didn't he just kiss Ani like 30 minutes before this? Before the game? So at the end of the day, man, at the end of the day, Bryce is one of them guys, he gotta have it his way because he's a spoiled brat, all right? He's a spoiled brat. So he's mad that Zach has his ex when this dude got slaves on his plantation. Like, who are you? You got away with rape 10 times and you mad because the girl you scarred for life found a better life with me? You a hater. But that's neither here nor there. Let's continue. So soon as they got on the field, Bryce became a beta male, accusing him of stealing his girlfriend. Now, at this point, the writers of this season have been trying to portray Bryce as this changed man because he's found Ani. But slowly but surely, he's starting to revert back to the guy he's always been. He's showing his old spots again because he's back at his old stomping grounds again. See, Ani could have never saw the real Bryce because she never saw him around his friends at Liberty. She only saw him away from the people at Liberty that enabled him and made him feel like he had to live up to the reputation of who Bryce Walker was. And that was Ani's biggest blind spot in this. She never saw Bryce be Bryce around the people he became Bryce around. You feel me? She never did. Now, so at the end of the day, this pushes Zach. Oh, so my fault. I skipped something for a second. My fault, y'all. I was too ahead of myself. So at the end of the day, he was mad at Zach for stealing his girlfriend, and he admitted to Zach. Well, he didn't really admit to his knee being messed up, but he was like, "How's your knee?" He says that to him at first. So this pushes Zach to give a great speech to motivate his team in the locker room. Now, in the speech, he said, "Winning at the cost of becoming someone you hate isn't worth it." I thought that was a very strong speech he gave. So when the brawl first broke out, it makes perfect sense a coward like Bryce would injure Zach on purpose. And this goes back to the photo that was shown, that was taken from Tyler earlier in the season, of why Zach was on the crutches. It was because there was a photo proving that Bryce was the one who injured him. But of course, earlier in the season, Zach tried to sweep that on the rug like it was no big deal. And we come to find out it was because Zach low-key got revenge on on that motherfucker, but he did not want to be a suspect in killing him, okay? And see, I need to go back to this because they tried so hard for so many episodes to show Bryce as this changed man. This entire video, I've been speaking about how hard they've been working to make him seem like a sympathetic figure. I've even talked about how they made him more of a sympathetic figure than Tyler, okay? So I've been very consistent this whole video. Now, would a changed man injure Zach's knee like that? Would a changed man ruin his sports career forever? Just because a girl he raped didn't have his baby? Like what is going on here? Now, this just shows Ani didn't help Bryce change like she thinks she did. She just gave him easy access to Punani, and he ran game on her gullible self to get the box. He literally ruined Zach's career just because a woman he raped didn't have his baby and moved on, but Ani is out here defending his honor like a bedwench as if he's a saint. I can't make this up. So Zach beats the crap out of Bryce, and see, I gotta paint this picture, man. So basically, Bryce promised Jessica that he would meet her and she could bring someone with her if she wanted to. He promised her he would meet her, and he just wanted to have one last conversation with her. The whole purpose of that conversation was he wanted to hand her a tape. He wanted to give her a tape similar to the tapes that Hannah made, okay? He wanted it to be his tape. He knew he was gonna die. He had a feeling, so he created a tape, all right? So that's the purpose of that. Now, what Bryce didn't know is, and the reason why I mentioned the speech Zach gave at halftime is, all of these people who were all victims of Bryce, they all became what they hated the most. They all became a different facet of Bryce's personality in order to set Bryce up. Now, what do I mean? So, the only reason why Zach was able to confront Bryce and beat him up was because Zach was tipped off by Jessica to go beat him up. But later on, you find out Jessica shows up to meet Bryce with Alex. And Alex was cooler with Zach than Jessica was, which connected the dots in my mind that Alex was the one who helped Zach get revenge. Okay? So when you really break it down, Jess wasn't the reason for this. Jess wasn't the reason why Zach beat Bryce down. It was really Alex. But because Alex and Jessica are both connected in this way, and they both blame Bryce for everything that happened to them, because everything happened in a row, you know? Like, people forget, Alex was with Hannah, and he cheated on her for Jessica. So he chose Jessica. And then for Jessica to get raped by Bryce? After Bryce already raped Hannah? For Hannah to not come out the closet and stop it? For Justin to just get pushed out of the room and not kick the dang door down to save his girlfriend? All of these things is running through his mind, dog. All these things is running through his mind. So I wanna lay this out fully to explain how Zach got there. Because it's important to know this. Zach got there because of Alex and Jessica. They knew he deserved to get revenge because of what happened to him in that brawl. And for Bryce to be so much of a coward, to not confront him mano a mano, and to just blindside tackle him. But then with a guy like Monty, who you claim to be protecting Tyler for, you give him the respect by just walking away? You don't snake him? It just goes to show Bryce ain't changed at all, y'all. He didn't change at all. So anyway, so Zach ends up showing up to the pier, all right? And this is where the scene of the crime was. Now, we're expecting it to shake down because Zach is in front of the cops right now confessing to the murder. But as you see the scene play out, Zach beats the crap out of Bryce, but he don't kill him. He even breaks his leg, but he don't kill him. He leaves him a bloody mess, but he don't kill him, all right? He ends up walking away. That's when Bryce starts bragging about smashing Chloe and knowing how she screams. Now, honestly, Zach wasn't even gonna break this dude's leg until he started talking about Chloe. Once he started talking out of pocket about Chloe, that's when he got his leg broke. So I want to provide that context. Zach was going to let him off easy, to be honest. But the dude brought Chloe into the picture. So he said, oh, no, you going to bring up my girl. I'm breaking your leg. Eye for an eye now. What's popping? Then Zach grabbed his cell phone and he chucked that into the water. All right? So any chance this dude had of getting help, getting rescue, getting picked up, was all thrown out the minute he mentioned Chloe. So I want it to be known, Bryce would have survived the night if he would have just shut up and not tried to one-up Zach and try to play him and try to talk about his body count when it came to Chloe. That's all he had to do. And he probably lives through this. So I want to provide that context, but let's continue. So, like I said, he breaks his leg, he throws his phone into the pier, but he didn't kill him. So I don't know why he's confessing to this crime. Even the police were confused about this being a murder confessional when Bryce wasn't dead yet when Zach left him, okay? So the police, they tell Zach he can go back home, but the flashback continues. Now this is when it gets really good, y'all. This is when it gets really good. Because you still don't know who the real killer is, but you do know that Zach played a role in wearing Bryce down enough for the true killer to come and finish him off. Now, I want to take my time with this because this is the best part. This is the only reason why you sit through the first trash bag 10 episodes. You're trying to get to this part. This is the one thing I'll give 13 Reasons Why credit for. They are good at building towards a climax and having the climax pretty decent. All right, so Bryce comes to and he sees a light shining down on him from the top of the pier. He even asks the question when the person is walking towards him, and he says, "Who is there? Who is that?" And then he eventually says, "Why are you here?" Right? So that suggests the person who met him there after is either Monty or Justin. That's at least how I'm running with it, because Monty said Justin fought Bryce before Bryce died, okay? So right now, everyone is assuming either Monty or Justin is there, all right? Now, as the episode reaches its end, Ani finally comes clean to Jessica to tell her she had sex with Bryce and calls it the worst thing she's ever done. Now, how clueless must this girl Ani be to think Jessica would tell her the worst thing she's done after hearing that? And how does Jessica know she can even trust Ani now that she knows a Bryce apologist was manager of her student council campaign that was led to straight up slander Bryce in the first place? I mean, she has to be looking at her side eye at this point. Now, Ani is the real hurricane of this season, all right? Not Bryce, who ruined Zach's career in football over a woman he didn't want. Not Clay, who is currently locked up because of Ani's trifling ways. Not Tony, who did everything in his power to help Bryce, but still was being told to snitch on his friends by Caleb for self-preservation. Not Justin, who's also a victim of rape, making it more unforgivable that he let Jess get raped in the first place, but since he's white, they don't tackle the hypocrisy in that. And they don't value black lives, so there's that. Not Alex, who did some steroids here and there to overcompensate for a weak body. Nobody else is responsible for withholding more key information than Ani. Nobody else jumped to as many conclusions without knowing anyone as Ani did either. Her character makes Hannah look like a good character. And that says a lot because Clay was hallucinating the majority of the time when Hannah said anything worth listening to. Facts. Facts. That's astral plane form Hannah right there. I mean, Ani is just a terribly written character from top to bottom. The series finale starts with Clay getting out of custody and having ankle monitors put on him for probation purposes. Monty goes to prison and gets spat on by his father after he finds out he's gay. And Seth also gets locked up, freeing up Justin from all of his debts. They got all the jail business out the way in the finale in the first 5 minutes to get back to solving the mystery of how Bryce Walker died. It starts off with Ani devising a plan that involved Clay as she talks to the cops. But as this is happening, Alex is low-key tripping in the cut. He out here trying to buy a gun off Tyler, who tries to buy a gun. But see, here's my question. Who tries to buy a gun from a possible school shooter? That don't even make sense, coach. Not only that, Clay finds out about it in like 2 minutes. How did they get in contact that fast and Clay was in the hallway at the same time? That seemed way too perfect in my opinion. Either that or Tyler extra quick with the redial button. But that's neither here nor there. But Donald. Tyler snitches on Alex, who started in the first season with the gun. So in a way, it's only right he turns up. As this is happening, Ani confirms she already knows who killed Bryce. And seeing how this happened right after she spoke to Jessica and confessed her darkest secret, the cliffhanger left it to where Jessica told her something. And whatever it was, must have pushed Ani to want to talk to the police well before when she's scheduled to in the day. Like she was in a rush to talk for a while. She tells Alex's dad to focus first on Jessica because understanding the people who didn't kill Bryce somehow further explains the reasons for who did it or something like that. It was real fake deep, if I'm being honest. But I am excited to see how they try to put this all together, because if I had to guess, the killer is probably Alex, based on the way it's starting off. Because why would Clay mention Ani as the one who killed Bryce, knowing how much she was choosing on Bryce, unless he was trying to use it to get the real killer down with the demonstration? So let it be known, at the beginning of this finale, I thought Alex was the killer. Now the funniest part about this is, Ani spends a long time describing what Monty did as it visually shows some moist stuff on the screen. So basically, Ani spends this entire time talking to police blaming Monty for killing Bryce when Monty was never there at the pier that night. Turns out Monty was too busy having sex with the guy he beat up at that Hillcrest party. He linked up with him again. And he linked up with him only because he was the Hillcrest school photographer for their football team and he saw him in the parking lot. So Ani is over here as an illegal citizen, a legal immigrant. She's out here telling a flat out lie to police about who the killer is, and they're buying it hook, line, and sinker. I'll explain why they're buying it in a second. Let's continue. If you were to close your eyes during this scene, you would have no idea what's going on in the scene. And that's because the audio isn't matching the video that you're watching. It was Ani blaming Monty for the murder by process of elimination, when the whole time he was doing some gay stuff in the cut with homie he beat up earlier in the season. It makes sense, because he was at the preppy party Bryce took him to. So she's pinning this murder on the wrong person. No matter what, she looks dumb for doing it, but it makes no sense why she put an emphasis on Jessica just to blame Monty. That's the part that was a plot hole, by the way. 13 reasons. You gotta calm it down with some of the dialogue, because sometimes you talk yourself into circles and it doesn't make sense. Now after that, she starts snitching on Tony for money laundering for the Mexican cartel, even though he never had a choice because his family was detained by ICE. I feel like this was a snake move by Ani here. Now it makes sense why Tony wanted to relocate as soon as he found out she was talking to police. He knew it was about to shake down and he gotta get low. And he got another two-door classic from his boyfriend Caleb. I thought that was pretty cool. So Tony is almost reverting to who he was in season 1, the same way it appears Alex is in this episode. So he and Alex are both kind of becoming extremes of what they started as, while Jessica is changing only if she didn't kill Bryce. As the flashback scene plays out, Alex and Jess show up after Zach beat up Bryce. Turns out, Jess set up Bryce to get beat up for hurting Zach. This made Bryce go from a nice pouty Bryce to almost an enraged, possessed Bryce as he got help to stand up from Alex. Bryce started talking reckless about how he was going to take out Zach's other leg when he got back. This is when Alex unlocks his damn shotgun gun and used them steroids effectively by F5ing Bryce's ass over the bridge with a broken leg, guaranteeing a death by drowning. I mean, this was the moment I said, oh, Alex then came of age. I'm proud of this man. I'm proud of you, Alex. I had a feeling you was the one who did it, coach. The minute you were asking for that gun from Tyler, I said, hold up now, wait a minute. This is a double bluff. They're trying to get us to suspect it isn't him by showing him tweaking right now. Nope, I believe it's him. And I'm glad I took the notes the way I did, because the way I could describe it is even better. Literally, y'all, he F5'd this man. And if y'all know Alex, y'all know this man walk with a limp. He ain't the strongest guy in the world. But it feels like he was doing them steroids for this one moment to throw Bryce's dilapidated, discombobulated self over the dang pier into the water. It seemed like he been waiting for this moment, my life. Whatever that nigga been on, he been waiting for this his whole life, coach. You feel it, dig me? He been waiting for this his whole life. And he even said, bro, he said some gangster stuff. I know he was on some Liam Neeson type stuff. He was like, you hurt every person I ever cared about in this life. And he just F5'd him. I'm like, damn, coach, where'd he get that from, boy? That man unlocked his awakening in Naruto Hero, boy. You know what I'm saying? This man went Ultimate Ninja Storm on your butt. He flexed that man. Hey, listen, I'm rolling. Bro, when I watched that, I ain't gonna stunt with y'all, man. I was chopped, right? I was shook. He threw that man like, dang. Even Jess was like, bruh. Oh my God. And see, now that I know Alex was the one who truly killed him, it makes everything that happened this season funnier that involves Alex, bro. It makes it even funnier, dog. But it explains a lot. It explains why every little bit of evidence that was taken from the scene, he reported immediately to everyone else. You know, it explains why he was so damn paranoid. It explains why all of a sudden he didn't care about Monty anymore. You feel what I'm saying? Like, he went from wanting to kill Monty last season and shoot him to, oh man, who cares about his presence, right? And it was all because he knew he had some heat on him. But let's continue. Cause y'all know me, I'm really gonna put an end cap to this. So now, before Alex threw him, he told him he's hurt every single person he's cared about. And that makes sense because he loves Jessica, cheated on Hannah, but loved Hannah as well, and he had a boner for Zach. Let me stop. You're homophobic. Oh, man. I couldn't resist, but y'all get my point. Zach helped Alex a lot during his rehabilitation phase after first being injured in season 2 with his rehab and whatnot. So, of course, he probably got Jess to tip off Zach to exact revenge in the first place. It all comes around full circle. But as this is happening, Ani is still blaming this all on Monty. So I guess this is her only way to atone for being fake towards Jess the whole season. But it still begs the question, why would Alex need the gun if he killed Bryce? Is he trying to kill himself again? Because Monty is already gone, and that's the only piece left on the board he would hate. And at the end of the day, Monty's locked up. Somehow this girl's English accent fused with circumstantial knowledge is hard to disprove. She created a lie on Monty with a cooperative group of teenagers. They all covered each other, but it still doesn't make sense how an illegal immigrant or non-citizen's word can hold much weight in a police station. I think this is the thing most lost on the season finale. The sheer unrealistic vibe of it all is meant to make sure more kids can survive, but it's still fake. How did they avoid the DNA? That's the question I would love people to answer. Like, they clearly said that the DNA showed, oh, well, it was raining, so it's kind of inconclusive, but we could clearly see it was 2 different people with a limp. So everyone assumed, oh, that's gotta be Zach, and that's gotta be Bryce, and that was Zach and Bryce, but no one would have thought it was Zach, Bryce, and Alex who all 3 walked with a limp. I mean, I thought that was a very slick way of telling us and revealing to us who the killer was without saying it. Because basically they were accomplices to the same murder, but that's neither here nor there. They said because it was raining, they couldn't get anything but smears from a limp with the left leg and one with the right. That in itself snitched on Alex being there if you put 2 and 2 together, but everyone expected it to only be Zach because of the personal connection. So this finale has created another plot hole, but didn't Zach give a speech about not becoming like your enemy to beat them? Seems like each of them agreed to play dirty to save each other simply because 2 of the group killed him. From an ethical perspective, they are all flagrant, and for the justice system to fall for it, I think it is very convenient because the cop doing the interview has the son who killed Bryce. And see, here's the other part I didn't want to get into because it would have spoiled too much. When you add to the fact that Bryce's family is basically paying off the police to get this job done as soon as possible, and then you add to the fact that clearly Ani showed up to the police station earlier than when she was scheduled to because she specifically wanted to be interviewed by Alex's dad because she knew he was the main guy who would blame it on Monty to save his son. Then you have a very advantageous scenario here. You know, like you have a very advantageous scenario here. But see, from an ethical perspective, everyone on this show is flagrant now. Like they've all kind of inherited small, tiny forms of Bryce by all pitching in to do this. Yeah, they got rid of a terrible person, but the lengths they went through to do it are just ludicrous, you know? And for the justice system to fall for it, I think was just crazy. So I think she did go there on purpose as early as she did to be around Alex's dad when she told the information. But here's the plot hole in all of this, ladies and gentlemen. The officer was recording the conversation. And during the conversation, he even said, Alex did it. He said it under his breath. He said it to himself, Alex did it. And then that's when Ani said, no, sir, Monty did it. And then she was like, and then he said something, are you aware that Monty died in his cell a couple of hours ago? Someone killed him in his cell, blah, 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 blah. And then she said, oh no, I'm so sorry for the fact that Monty died. But at the end of the day, sir, let the dead bury the dead. And that's actually the title of the final episode of the series. Let the dead bury the dead. They legitimately pinned a murder charge on Monty simply because he was already locked up and couldn't defend himself. Simply because of that. They didn't care about nothing else. They let Alex get off free. They let Jessica get off free. Zach get off free. All these people got off free. All right? Simply because the cop's son was the one who killed him. But I guarantee you, if it wasn't Alex who did it, the cop would have went hard as fuck to put whoever he could have not named Monty in prison. You feel me? Also, it's not lost on me that Monty was the only other brown guy on the show besides Tony, and they kind of racially profiled and framed him for a crime he didn't commit. Now, at first, the father did try to fight it a bit, but come on, man. You could tell he didn't want his son to be locked up for that, even if his son deserved it. You feel me? But it just go to show, man, they will make up some stuff on a person of color at the drop of a dime if it benefits their own bottom line. You feel it, dig me? So, the craziest thing is the officer mentions Alex had to have been an accomplice in this. That means he knew off the rip that Monty didn't do it. And remember, they found steroids at the scene of the crime. You know, they found that in I believe they found it in Bryce's vehicle. And those were the same steroids that he found, I believe, in Alex's room. So it all comes back full circle. So that means he knew off the rip that Monty didn't do it. He's a good cop, though, because he suspected his son with no biases. But Ani proposes that they let the dead bury the dead. Here's the thing, though. He recorded the conversation. That means he was recorded admitting his son was the likely culprit. That means he would have had to delete that, at least for this to work. But we never saw that either. So it's pretty much implied that the cops played dirty to pin this on Monty. The kids played dirty to pin this on Monty. And even though Monty did deserve this, he already was dead when they pinned it on him, so he wasn't even serving the time. So in my opinion, I thought it was the writers doing more dog whistling that, you know, we shouldn't be putting any of our own in prison. We should be putting more brown and black folk. That's what the finale told me. I'm sure it told you something as well, but I would love to see y'all comment below and give me y'all opinions on this season as a whole. So at the end of the day, you know, it ends up getting pinned on Monty. The entire group, they meet with each other, you know, and Ani essentially says, hey, man, this group is inseparable, man. There's no way you could get in between them. They're as thick as thieves, blah, 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 blah. And I guess Ani being the one to lie on their behalf, it earned her the trust she finally wanted. It gained her the friend she finally wanted. And now I guess she's Clay's girl now, and they move on and life is happily ever after or whatever. But I don't know. I don't think Ani deserves Clay. I think what she did, it was honorable, but it was still bogus. It was still flagrant. And for her to have really no education on the American judicial system, come into this country, completely lie under oath, have a cop dispose of the evidence of her lying under oath, dispose of the evidence of Zach confessing to a murder charge. I mean, the amount of work they did this season, and it shouldn't be lost that Tony's family got deported out of all of this as well. You know, a lot of people in a lot of positions really got screwed over during this season. And it mainly was the people of color that got screwed over. Nobody else really got screwed over, you know? Even Zach, a person of color, he lost his damn leg in the process. You feel me? But it seemed like all these white folks on this show, they get to live happily ever after and forget about it ever happening. You know? It's crazy to me. But, so needless to be said, this is the last episode in the series, in my opinion. I think they put an end to all of this right here and there. I think after bringing Ani in, you can't really do another season after this. It's done. Bryce is gone. There is no tension anymore to build upon towards. And this is the last hurrah. If I had to rate this season, I would give it a 6 out of 10. I thought the season was pretty terrible. It was a chore to get through. I had to binge watch all of it in 2 days just to finish it because I knew all of these hot takes and my perspective would be altered if I spent too much time away from it. But yeah, so that's how I feel on that as well. And at the end of the day, y'all, I mean, I didn't like the ending very much at all. I mean, Jessica basically, after we find out Alex killed Bryce for her, right? She decides, and after Alex got let off the crime, he didn't get charged with it. All of a sudden, Jessica is like, you know we'll be friends forever, right? And she's friend zoning him to be with Justin. It's almost as if because Justin revealed he was also a victim of sexual assault, he gets to have Jessica. He gets to live happily ever after with Jess. And all Alex can be is the guy she uses for some sex here and there, but in terms of relationship, she won't be back with him. I thought Alex got done bogus. You know, he killed the guy who raped her, but she's choosing the guy who let her get raped instead. You know? And see, here's my thing. You took Alex with you to meet with Bryce for a reason. You didn't take Justin with you. And in my opinion, you didn't take Justin with you because you knew Alex had your back more than Justin did. And you also probably knew Justin was a little too, what's the word I'm looking for? Compromised when it came to Bryce. He would have never killed Bryce. But you knew Alex had it in his locker to do it because Alex had more than enough motivation to do it. All right? But for her to go ahead and choose Justin over Alex, I felt like Jessica, she just reverted back to who she was before, you know, all of this was solved, you know? You know, she's hedging again, you know? Clay, he's with Ani now officially, you know? He actually went up to the Walker plantation. He had some kind words for Bryce's mom. He said he was sorry for his death. And she said, oh, well, I'm glad you finally mean it when you say sorry now. She let him in the house. He met Ani's mother for the first time, spoke to her. And Ani's mom wasn't really feeling him. But at the end of the day, she heard about how Ani was going to lie on him to get him off. And he didn't allow her to lie on him. So instead, she lied on Monty and created that plan. And because of that, the mom respected Clay, and she found him to be worthy to date her daughter. So that's how that was ended on that side. Zach, of course, you know, he's living happily ever after with Chloe, but they don't really answer whether or not he goes back to, you know, athletics or not. Maybe him confessing to that is just him wanting to move on, and he don't want to deal with sports anymore. I'm not sure, but they didn't really answer any questions regarding him. Now, in terms of Tyler did get to have his own art exhibit, which was pretty dope. It looked to be at the coffee shop. I'm not sure, but he did get his own art exhibit, which is great. So now the photos he can take, he actually has friends who will show up to support the photos he takes. And who knows, maybe he'll auction them off and sell them eventually. So that was a good way to end Tyler's story. And it was good to see him with friends now. I mean, people love him in that school now, and rightfully so. He never really did anything to be an outcast. But like I said previously, high school, a lot of things are hard to explain in high school. Lames are often relative. Popular kids are often relative. It really depends on your student body and what they value. I'm trying to think, who else did I not mention yet amongst the core group? Mentioned him already. Of course, Monty died in his cell. They didn't really answer much to it. They just said he was found dead in his cell. So, you know, I don't know if the man committed suicide, but the way they explained it, it sounded like he got murdered in his cell. Now the question is, did he get snitched on by his dad for being gay? Was him telling his dad he was gay so proud in that room with all them other inmates? Did that get him killed? These questions need to be answered, but they won't because no one likes Monty, and, you know, they give Bryce all these episodes to tell his story, but they don't really give any other characters. Even if they were bad characters, they don't really fully explain their motivations. And but what I did find was very interesting was the fact that the gay dude who Monty was with homecoming night, who would have been his alibi for why he didn't kill anybody, I found it very interesting that he actually brought that smoke to Ani. And he said, how dare you blame him for the murder? I mean, he was with me that night. And Ani had this look on her face like, I know, but, you know, we had to blame someone. And he was looking at him like, he was looking at Ani like he was a human being. Like, you just gonna pin a crime he didn't commit? You know, he's a human being. He was already locked up for what he did to Tyler. Isn't that a bit overkill? And see, I agree with that guy. And it's rare y'all get me agreeing with the alphabet boys, but I'm gonna keep it a bean here. You know, it feels like they did Monty grimy because they knew he was brown and they knew the feds would jump on it. That's what it feels like. But for a black girl to be the mouthpiece that starts this conversation, it just shows like she has no idea. Brown and black people gotta stick together, coach. The minute we start throwing each other under the bus to keep a white person from going to jail, that's the minute where we're all screwed. Okay? Because we ain't got no code. And that's why I had to decode this season 3 of 13 Reasons Moist. Because I feel like no one else is going to really tell it like it is. And that's why I'm going to entitle this video, Decoding 13 Reasons Why, a Racy Review. Because at the end of the day, this season was very racist, okay? And I feel like no one else is going to speak on the elephant in the room of slavery. No one else is going to speak on the elephant in the room of the plantation that was the Walker family compound. No one else is going to speak on these things as candid as I will, because everybody else is so scared to offend people. Look, man, they obviously ain't scared to offend us if they put this in a TV show. So it's time for you to grow a pair and keep it a buck. And that's how I really feel, man. But Tony and Caleb, they live happily ever after. It seemed like they went ahead and moved out of the city and went closer towards where his family is living, post-ICE taking them away. So they got a nice little happily ever after. Hannah didn't even get mentioned at the end. And I think she didn't get mentioned for a reason. Because now Clay has the girl that replaced Hannah now. He has his black Hannah, right? For all intents and purposes. But I just don't like the fact that they forced Clay to settle down with Bryce's sloppy seconds after he dealt with all the trauma of Hannah being Bryce's sloppy seconds, and he didn't even get with her. You know, I just don't like how everyone has to be Bryce's sloppy seconds, but that's how they chose to write this season, and that's what it is. So I stand by my rating of a 6 out of 10. This has been Recency Bias Radio, where no one is safe from criticism, and I am your humble host, Dave Smith. And at the end of the day, Coach, I think I've been very fair to this show. I don't think I've been unfair. But if you think I've been fair or unfair, please comment below and let your boy know. Because I put a lot of work into taking these notes. I put a lot of work in dissecting what they really were trying to tell us in this story. And at the end of the day, we need more representation. And even though I might not like this series, we do need more high school shows like this, though. Because the kids need shows like Degrassi. The kids need shows like this. Now, would I prefer they didn't have shows like this that make the black person in these schools look so inept? Of course. But I'm smart enough to know that as long as these are white companies publishing, producing, and directing these entities, we will not have the right type of representation. That's why we must come together to support each other so we can prop each other up to create these new forms of media to be able to truly represent our people correctively and effectively. But as long as we are split, as long as we are self-hating, as much as Ani did this season, as much as Jessica to a degree did this season, as long as we are focused on the self-hate, we can never focus on pushing forward, you know? And that's how I truly feel. And after watching a season like this, I mean, come on, man. My fault. I accidentally looked at the credits and got done watching the dang finale one more time just to make sure there was nothing I missed. But, I mean, we started off in season 1 with tapes. We started off with Hannah telling people how things went, you know? And we dealt with Clay slowly but surely going down the rabbit hole of just insanity. Then season 2, the trial came up, more tapes came up, and it turns out Zach was piping down Hannah. And the fact that Zach winded up with Chloe, I think that also played a role in why he reached his tipping point with Bryce. Because let's be real, Hannah killed herself after messing with Zach, after being raped by Bryce. But all signs, if I'm not mistaken, I think all signs pointed towards she got raped after she was with Zach, not before she was with Zach. So Zach probably resented Bryce for ruining the Hannah he knew, the same way he probably resented the fact that Bryce just couldn't take the fact that he was now with Chloe. So Zach, man, he's one of them characters, man, where, in my opinion, he could have been a lot more heroic if they would have allowed him to be. But, you know, it's an ensemble cast, and they couldn't let him do too much. I kind of wish we would have seen more of Kevin Porter, because I believe that brother had a huge impact on all of these people. He was the one who put Clay on game with what was going on between Bryce and Ani. He was the one who confirmed it without the police having to, and he did it in the past, not in the future when Clay was being interrogated, which shows that Clay did have knowledge of that when he was denying it, but he was just pushing it off like a tumor. You feel what I'm saying? He was just pushing it back to the back of his head. But I do feel sorry for certain characters, though, man. But I thought it was very interesting, though, and this is one thing I didn't mention in my notes. Did any of y'all notice how the same Hillcrest football player who made Bryce feel like crap for being a rapist was the exact same dude who groped Jessica during their protests at the homecoming game? I thought that was ironic. Looking at it a second time, I said, wait a minute, this is the same guy who treated Bryce like crap for being a rapist, and he just straight up molested a girl on the field in front of everybody at homecoming. Like, huh? And that was the guy Justin ran out to beat up. You feel me? So it just goes to show, rape culture is built into the confines of high school sports. Let's not be stupid. I was once a high school athlete as well. I mainly only played baseball when I played it. But don't get the game twisted. I remember, and see, I can relate to guys, and see, this is where I'm just going to talk about myself a little bit. I can relate to Clay. I can relate a bit to Tyler. In high school, I was a very smart kid. But see, the way my family dynamic worked was, you was praised for being a jock. You wasn't praised for being intelligent. So naturally, as a kid, the self-hate you have is for, damn, I wish I could trade my intelligence for some athletic ability, right? And I remember I had this girlfriend, senior year in high school. cheated on me for a dude on the basketball team. And I could have been on some Clay stuff. I could have been on some Alex stuff. You know what I'm saying? But you know what? Even at that young of an age, I was smart enough to know the girl was out of pocket, right? I didn't allow that girl back then to ani me. You feel what I'm saying? I didn't allow her to manipulate my emotions because she wasn't worth nothing. You see what I'm saying? Because she ain't worth nothing don't mean you gotta prove you ain't worth nothing but stooping down to her level. And at the end of the day, this is what those kids did. They stooped down to Bryce's level to get justice their way. You feel me? Bryce got off with 10 rape charges. So they said, all right, since you got off, we gonna figure out a way to get our man's Alex off. You know, it isn't true justice, but I guess if you were just rooting for these kids based off of what Bryce put them through, it was justice enough for you. And I can't really be mad at you when I take into account the context of it all. So that's my thoughts on that, y'all. I think this was a season that they were offered too much money not to do. They knew that technically from a chronological order perspective, they had certain characters they couldn't bring back because they were seniors the previous year. So they had to cut off a lot of excess fat. And that's why they had to introduce some new characters to stretch it out to 13 episodes. And that's just what it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed Decoding 13 Reasons Why, a Racy review by Recency Bias Radio. And this is where no one is safe from criticism. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'm out.